that said, we will get this meeting of the ISD 181 Board of Education called to order, please. And we will begin with roll call, please, Kelly.
Kevin Boyles.
Here.
Michelle Brecker.
Here.
DJ Dondelier.
Here.
Randy Heidman.
Here.
Sarah Spear.
Here.
John Ward.
Here. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the approval of tonight's agenda as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Director Ward.
I'd like to amend the agenda to add under new business school board retreat discussion under new business for action.
Okay, so is that a motion, Director Ward?
Yes, I moved it.
Thank you.
So it's a motion to
have a discussion during the new business segment about
try to
school
schedule
board.
one. That's fine. I can second that.
Okay.
No problem.
So we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Dondelinger to add an agenda item for a school board retreat discussion during our new business. We'll do it as the last new business item. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So motion carries. I'll add that to the agenda.
Thank you.
Ward. All right, so back to the approval of the agenda as presented. We have a motion on the floor from Director Dondelinger.
I'll second.
So we have a motion from Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Spear to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we will move on to, at this time of year, what is usually a fairly significantly voluminous list of recognitions for some of our district students and such. Who do we have reading tonight? Heidi, do you know?
I don't, is Jessica Hapajoki with us?
Nope, I don't see her back there,
Okay.
so I'll take it.
Perfect.
Congratulations to BLC students, Silas McKee, Asher Ryan, Ariana Trio, and Sapphire Trio, I hope I'm saying those right, who competed in the state MAAP Stars competition in Mankato. 9 teams competed in the competition, 125 total students. The categories for the competition are as follows. Team management and decision making, which had 30 teams. We got a gold ribbon in second place overall for Sapphire and Ariana. Video promotion with 4 teams, gold ribbon in first overall for Ariana and Silas. Parent decision making with 28 teams, gold ribbon for Asher, Silas, and Sapphire. Workplace decision making, 26 participants with a gold ribbon, 5th place, Ariana, and 4th place, Asher Ryan. Employment interview, 73 participants with a silver ribbon for Sapphire, gold ribbon for Asher. And the final one was public speaking with 24 participants, silver ribbon for Silas, Sapphire, and a gold ribbon in 5th place overall for Ariana. Congratulations to the Baxter Elementary students of the trimester for spring 2024. Oh, we do have, do we have somebody?
Yep, Dr. Stelmach is here.
Great, I didn't see her back there. Come on up. Let you do yours.
Question, real
Yes.
quick. What does MAAP stand for?
Minnesota Association of Alternative Education Programs.
So our BLC students,
Okay.
teams
okay.
from BLC
Oh,
participated.
cool.
Yep.
I just didn't know what it stood for.
All right, Dr. Stelmach, take it away.
Sure, thank you. All right, so I have Baxter Student of the Trimester to recognize. Our theme this year was Together We Grow. Trimester 3 was blooming. So staff were looking for students who have shown improvement and are blooming in their academics and in their social emotional. So for kindergarten, JP Freeman, Vincent Kelly, Gabriella Coring, Brayson Maison, Quinton Magnan, Liam Millock, Freya Sibbert, Taylor Samiski, first grade, Delilah Bouch, Bodie Brummett and Kai Brummett, Grace Dennison, Anne-Marie Kocher, Carter Kubasek, Cedar Newman, Jackson Thompson, Heathen Tran. In second grade, Henning Anderson, Ansel Barrick, Avery Bustler, Maya Janison, Easton Jervy, Eva Murray, Ali Sikora. Grade 3, Treziah Cook, Olivia Cleland, Lexi Calm Piper, Lundgren Paisley Prentice, Braden Wisniewski, and in 4th grade, Audrey Ash, Annalie Davy, Violet Evans, Brenna Erbst, Elizabeth Hool, Greta King, Kenna Kuklis, Lila Lowry, and Laken Otterson. And then also we had the third annual at our new location, Superstar Mile. So we wanted to give a shout out to those kids just to recognize the area of physical education as well. Kids run the mile for their physical education program. Then we run the opportunity mile if they choose to do it again to improve their time. And then the Superstar Mile recognizes and gives an opportunity to run in front of the whole school and guests from the family if boys ran the 7:30 or girls ran that mile in an 8:30. So congratulations to our Superstar Mile runner participants. In first grade, Finley Spahala, second grade, Sydney Anderson, Benji Bailiff, Olive Bear, Levi Barrick, Cruz Bender, Dawson Heron, Lily Linder, Landon Moats, Grayson Mord, Kai Moses, Jet Otterson, Landon Sazima, Kieran Swartout, Ali Sakura, Jack Wozni, and Michael Zahar. Third grade, Chase Anderson, Elsie Anderson, Elliot Carroll, Olivia Cleland, Alexis Dennison, Gracie Kiffmeyer, Presley Leonard, Wesley Norman, and Braden Wisniewski. And then finally in fourth grade, Johnny Bassett, Addie Bender, Emma Campbell, Nora Khan, Abe Frankie, Aaron Freeholtz, Logan Gorin, Garrett Gunderson and Owen Gunderson, Melody Herring, Luna Milady, Izzy Myers, Jack Navin, Lucy Nelson, Xander Norquist, Kendall Olson, Rayleigh Rudolph, Paige Salisker, Ellison Shepard, Jude Starnes, and Josie Zahar. Thank you.
May is such a fun month to celebrate. From Riverside, something we do Student of the Month. We do so many fun different celebrations, but something our community does that I think really needs to be recognized is our Kiwanis members honor our Brainerd students for something they call bringing up the grades. And they've done it for almost 50 years. It's a really, really awesome program. So at Riverside, there were 6 children chose: Paisley Cook, Parker Voss, Isabel Navarez, Terrence Radman, Gretchen Gardapi, and Archer Underdahl. We just really want to thank them. They really helped this year, making Riverside feel like a place to belong.
Principal Bjorgi, any chance you want to take the next one?
Oh gosh, no way.
Yes, please.
They told me I wouldn't have to do this one. But I'm sitting here, so I'll do it. Dr. Hunt.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Wow, this one's near and dear to my heart. You're gonna make me cry. Publicly.
Make sure Kelly had tissues.
Well, thank you. Molly Rasky. So we just, as an elementary team, we really wanted to congratulate and thank our past and present literacy coaches for their dedications and contributions. Many people have participated in this work: Beth Swenson, Tammy Swanson, Sue Ziegler, Renee Leonard, Lisa Morgan, Tanya Person, Guy Kelm, Lisa Drake, Erica Bordwell, Amanda Langen, Kathy Kidd, Jill McCulley, Lisa Drake, Lorraine Lambert, Sue Sabaski, Wendy Becker, and Taylor DeMuth. And so, this is good work. This is many, many, many years of a lot of people dedicating a lot of time and energy. So, thank you.
And as you say that, thank you, Principal Bjorgi. Just so you know, Principal Bjorgi served as a literacy coach for all 6 elementary schools, and I think it needs to be noted that during her tenure as our literacy coach, that is the time when all 6 elementary schools received blue ribbons. Historical in the state of Minnesota. So thank you to all the literacy.
All right, next up, we have a capstone project presentation from Reese Glenn, and I believe Ms. Vandenputti is here to do a soft intro at minimum.
So I'm super excited that you're joining us, and one of the things we've tried to do, especially as we get to the tail end of a school year, is to highlight educational excellence. And this is one of the programs that we have at the high school with research and capstone projects, taught by Ms. Vandenputti and also by Ms. Harmer at the high school. When I was over there, I got to sit through some, and when I talked to Ms. Vandenputti and Ms. Harmer, they said, wow, we have somebody who we think would be good to bring into the board, and that would be Ms. Reese Glenn. And I'm also pleased to introduce you to your next student council president at Brainerd High School, also Miss Reese Glenn. So we are thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you.
And she has to get to a band concert, so that's why we're kind of moving her forward.
And she just came from softball practice, so, yeah. Yeah, so I'm Wendy Vandefooty, and I teach language arts or English at Brainerd High School. And this year I taught AP seminar, and there were 45 juniors who chose this route for their language arts, to fulfill their language arts credits. And it's an incredibly exciting course. They come in and they just have to learn the basics. How do you find academic research? What is a database? What the heck is APA citation? How do we know if the research is credible, if it's believable? So they learn that, and then they start writing about it and presenting about it. So they're working on their AP exam scores along the way, something we call Performance Task 1 and Performance Task 2. The first one, they are working together as a team, and they identify a theme. They self-select teams, and they find a theme and a topic, and then they narrow that down and they start researching. They take different perspectives, different lenses, and all do an individual research report, and then come back together as a team and share their findings and create a real-world research question, come up with a solution or conclusion, and they present on it. And it's a lot of learning. For many of them, it's the first time they've given an oral presentation that is professional like this, and so there's great cause for celebration after that one. And then they go on to Performance Task 2, where they fly solo. And they receive, which will make more sense when you listen to Reese's, Brainerd High School, all the students and everybody throughout the U.S. receives what is called a stimulus packet. And within that, there will be lots of different things. There's a lot of research articles, there are newspaper articles. This year there was a painting, there was a piece of literature, and they have to identify themes that might come out of there, and then they have to take one of those themes, turn it into a real-world question that they can find a solution for, and they have to write an argument, like this is the best solution for that particular issue, and they have to present on it. So you'll hear Reese's in a minute. They have to present in 6 to 8 minutes, and they have to meet all of the criteria. When they're done, they have to answer a couple of what's called oral defense questions that I ask them. They don't know what I'm going to ask them, so they have to know their research inside and out, forward and backwards, and it's just really, it's such a rewarding experience for these students and for Nicole Harmer and I watching them grow. It's incredible. Most of them will move on to AP research next year, and when they're done, they can graduate with their capstone diploma, which I think colleges are recognizing as one of the strongest indicators of college readiness. It's all of the things they will have to do in college and in their careers, and it's pretty exciting. So even those who aren't moving on to research, I would say, are really, really proud of the work they've done and glad they took the class this year. So thanks for your support. Next year, I would love to have anybody from the board come and be in our audience as Christina and Andrea and Heidi have. It's really exciting to watch their work. So thanks for supporting us in this programming, and Reese has been wonderful. You will see she is a perfect example of the amazing work that these kids, are able to produce in just a little bit of time. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, everyone. My presentation is on Indigenous women and sexual violence. Native Americans have been wronged by the government via mismanagement of violence and the stripping of tribal sovereignty for centuries. This government injustice is represented in a quote from Eloise Cobell, Small Measure of Justice. This case serves as an appalling reminder of the evils that result when large numbers of the politically powerless are placed at the mercy of institutions engendered and controlled by a politically powerful few. Although this quote specifically pertains to economic struggles for Native Americans, the themes of justice and wronging of minority groups are prevalent. These themes are also shown in the painting, Confrontation on the Bridge, more through violence towards minority groups. For my presentation, keeping these themes in mind, I decided to explore sexual violence towards Indigenous women in America. Through my research, I found that 1 in 3 of every Native American women will experience sexual assault in their lifetime. Tingy et al., 2022. This issue has moved many government officials to classify the surge of violence as an epidemic. In turn, the U.S. government has attempted to attack this epidemic through legislation, but it has resulted in limited tribal sovereignty and failed to mitigate sexual violence.
This issue led me to finalize my research question. How can we effectively mitigate the prevalence of sexual violence against the marginalized Indigenous women population in the United States through the legal system? To deeply understand the causes of this problem using a historical perspective is necessary. Dating back to colonization, Native American women are the most targeted racial group of sexual violence in America, Manteghini 2021. Colonial European cultural customs consisted of strict gender roles, preaching that men have an undeniable superiority and power over women, which they use to conquer them and use them for their own sexual advantage. Studies have shown that these patriarchal ideas are a major cause of Indigenous women targeting in America. Another cause of this issue is the construction sites near tribal areas. Many pipeline companies operate near Indian reservations and are male-dominated and hire sex offenders and criminals, Condis 2021. For these reasons, and because plenty of offenders can't be prosecuted by tribes, which will be elaborated on later, these sites make sexual violence much worse for Native women. Now I'll use a historical and social lens to examine the existing legislation section. Legislation addressing crime and sexual violence in Indian country is a complicated, tangled mess. But to simplify, we'll first look at the legislative blockades. First off, under the Major Crimes Act of 1885, felony assault cases, rape cases in this context, in Indian country, are referred to federal courts for jurisdiction, but they are frequently turned away, leaving many rape cases unaddressed. Furthermore, the Oliphant versus Suquamish Indian Tribe of 1978 Supreme Court case stripped tribes of the authority to prosecute non-Indians. And the Bureau of Justice Statistics data shows that in 4 out of 5 sexual offense cases against Native American women, the offender is classified as white, meaning many cases cannot be tried in tribal court, ultimately interfering with justice and tribal sovereignty. Over time, the government has enacted laws to try and reduce sexual violence, but they haven't done a great job. First, the Indian Civil Rights Act, ICRA, of 1968 extremely limited tribal sentencing punishments and labeled sexual violence crimes as misdemeanors, so tribes could not fully enact justice with the shortened misdemeanor sentencing limits. In a step forward, however, the Tribal Law and Order Act, TLOA, of 2010 increased the tribal sentencing limits for Indian offenders and provided funding for prosecution. This sentencing extension meant that tribes could sentence rapists as felons for up to 9 years, a major advancement since the Major Crimes Act. Finally, the most recent case, the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, allowed tribal jurisdiction over non-Indians, but only in specific cases where the offender has to either work, live, or have an intimate or dating relationship with the victim. VAWA also provided a small federal grant for tribes to fund their new prosecution responsibilities. Now we'll address why these pieces of legislation have missed the mark. The TLOA, which amended the ICRA and the Major Crimes Act, applied only to Indian offenders, and as stated previously, sexual offenders are usually white. Therefore, the sentencing extension and funds wouldn't be applicable in most cases. However, VAWA did say that tribes could prosecute non-Indian offenders if they had a relationship with the victim or lived or worked on the reservation. But oftentimes, the victim and the offender have absolutely no connection or relationship. Douglas, 2018. Therefore, VAWA isn't as effective as it could be because of these stipulations. But VAWA did signify major progress as it showed government care, gave more jurisdiction, and granted some federal funding to help tribal courts with their new responsibilities. Ultimately, the flaws outweigh the successes, leading me to my solution. The first part is forbidding industrial sites to be near tribal areas because they are hot spots for sexual offenders. Doing this will mitigate the risk of Native women coming in contact with them and jeopardizing their safety. Second, the government needs to modify VAWA and leave prosecution up to tribes regardless of the relationship or lack thereof with the victim. Then, to provide tribes with the resources they need for housing criminals and conducting court cases, a sufficient federal grant that coincides with the remediation of VAWA will be put in place. Some limitations of the solution are as follows. This solution does not tackle the lingering colonial and patriarchal tendencies that fuel sexual violence towards Native women. These deeply ingrained attitudes demand individual change that sadly the legal system cannot fix. Secondly, gaining government support in modifying VAWA might be difficult considering how long it took to be put in place addressing non-Indian perpetrators in the first place. Lastly, a large number of sexual violence cases in Indian country are left unreported, meaning this case would be ineffective, and those cases would be unaddressed and unsolved. Implications of the solution include the obvious, a reduction in sexual violence cases and justice for the Indian victims to which it applies, all of which are very positive. A negative implication, though, is pushback from construction companies in not being allowed to reside in tribal areas or close to them, creating some controversy. To conclude, violence against minority groups, particularly Indigenous women, is very prevalent in American society. Significant problems contributing to this issue include colonial patterns, the proximity of construction sites and tribes, and legislative constraints hindering justice and tribal sovereignty. In response, a solution is proposed, prohibiting industrial sites near Indian reservations, amending VAWA to grant tribal jurisdiction over all sexual violence cases, and providing a federal grant to support tribal judicial efforts. If implemented, this solution could ensure the safety and justice of oppressed Indigenous women across America. Thank you. These are my references.
So we said we wouldn't ask you any oral defense questions. But I would like it to open up to the board.
Okay.
If you have any questions for Reese.
Why are the federal cases dropped?
The federal cases?
Well, you said there's a lot of them are taken up. I mean, it's a rape case, so it sounds pretty serious to me. So why would the federal cases, you said they don't get prosecuted, so
They might not be addressed.
why would that be?
Because there's so many of them, so getting them up to that federal level takes a lot of time, and they're just either not efficient or it takes so long that,
They just drop them?
yeah, they're just kind of,
You
okay.
think that's true?
Yeah, it is true.
Or do you think they settle out, or they
I mean,
bargain, or how do you just get your case dropped?
I
I'm
don't,
not saying you're wrong, I'm just curious,
Yeah,
it
I
sounds
guess-
unbelievable. I'm pretty sure if I had a felony case on me, they'd probably take her all the way to the top. I don't think
yeah,
that-
because I think,
I don't think they'd drop it.
because there's so, I mean, there's a lot of confusion on tribal sovereignty and what, you know, tribes have over certain cases, so getting them up to that federal level along with all of the other sexual violence cases in America, I think they're kind of bottom of the barrel last, they aren't their main focus, I guess, I would say.
Okay, well, good job.
Thank you.
So is this the last time that you'll do this presentation, or is there more
This
scheduled?
would be the last time, yes, I would do this presentation, unless I wanted to do something similar for research next year, which is a longer, more in-depth research, I guess, so,
Excellent work.
yeah, thank you.
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
I know we said we wouldn't ask you one of the oral defense questions, but I really like this one.
Yeah.
If you had to do this project again, is there anything you would do differently? Is there any piece along the way?
I think I would focus on, or maybe look into more sexual violence cases outside of tribal reservations and more just in society in general, because they're also very prevalent, but I really needed to focus in on more, the tribal sovereignty issues, and that focus mainly on those tribal reservations and issues within those areas, so,
Makes sense. Great work.
thank you, yeah.
Intense work.
Yes, it was a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks again. Now we'll move along to public input. A member of the public can address the board during this time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to Superintendent Hahn, and the Board of Education and Superintendent will not converse with guests to address the topics discussed at this time. So we will start this evening with Melissa Schmeck, please.
All right, hello. My name is Melissa Schmeck, and I've called the Brainerd Lakes area home for over 20 years. I am married to a BHS grad and have 2 daughters in the district. I've been teaching for over 20 years and have been an employee of this amazing district for 10 years. Currently, I teach kindergarten at Baxter Elementary, the best job ever. I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Hahn for her selfless service in our district for the past 28 years. We will never have a cheerleader who cares about our community with the genuine depth she exhibits every day. It's sad that the decision was made upon her hire to cut the assistant superintendent position, therefore denying her the necessary support for a role so large and complicated. Perhaps we would not be in this unfortunate position of searching for a new superintendent had a different decision been made. I would also like to express my disappointment in the process of searching for a new superintendent. For a board that claims to care about including stakeholders in important decisions, it diminished our importance as district employees to be completely excluded from the hiring process. There is no one with a greater stake in the hiring decision than those who have dedicated their entire careers, not just an elected term, to this district by educating and caring for the students of our community. To essentially be told that our voice and perspectives were irrelevant in this decision-making process was short-sighted, hurtful, and illogical. Leadership matters, but so do the people impacted by that leadership. I personally observed all portions of the superintendent search that were open to the public. It became clear in the last stages that some members of the board were not interested in filling the position, as evidenced in part by the rejection of an experienced, highly qualified, and well-regarded candidate. Several board members commented they were looking for someone new and different with no explanation of what that meant. Our district and our community deserve an explanation of those comments. Otherwise, we will draw our own conclusions about the intent of those board members. Comments were also made by board members about their disappointment in not being able to ask different questions of the candidates, even though all board members had a chance to write interview questions and the final ones were reviewed and approved by the board. This leads me to wonder if all board members were fully engaged in the entire process. Ultimately, hiring an interim superintendent when our district is facing significant challenges, including huge training needs relating to the READ Act and continuing budgetary concerns, was simply irresponsible and will inhibit our ability to move forward as a district. On more than one occasion, during the interview and discussion process, I also noticed nonverbal communication happening between a board member and a person in the audience.
And next up, we have, hopefully somebody knows how to run an iPhone timer.
Stop. Hit stop.
It
It
stopped.
doesn't have a stop.
Reset.
Oh, wait, you know what, there's multiple ones going on.
You said
Hang on.
multiple alarms?
Yeah,
3-alarm or 2-alarm?
I don't know. Anyway. Sean and Everly Spade, please.
Hi, I'm Sean Spade. This is Everly Spade, my daughter, 10 years old, 4th grade at Garfield. I've been having some issues with, I don't know if it's the school, whether it be employees or policy, which bounds them by stuff. First to start off with, when we got her power chair, which is technically a wheelchair, she was restricted in speed limits lower than kindergartners, let's say. Per ADA laws, she's supposed to be able to keep up with her peers. So if she's in 4th grade, you can kind of do the math. Kindergartners are going faster than her. That's probably not okay. Especially at recess time when all the kids are having fun running around her. All this stuff I brought up to you guys before about the issues of lack of playground equipment for people in wheelchairs or any disabilities, and we've addressed those and come up with some solutions, which is amazing. But the other thing is, just last week, my daughter was denied access to her wheelchair, her personal wheelchair that is prescribed to her. She came to school with it in hopes to show it off and use it that day after it was fitted to her the day before from a Reliable Medical down in St. Cloud. My understanding of ADA laws, my daughter has a right to choose which mobility device she wants to use that day. Doesn't matter whether it be her power chair or her manual chair. Either is considered a wheelchair. The only things that people can restrict my daughter with is other powered mobility devices. And that is if it becomes an inconvenience, like if it doesn't fit down aisles and hallways or of the such, it's gas powered, fumes, this and that. So when I told the school that they need to respect my daughter's wishes and let her use her wheelchair, she was denied the second day also. It was not until I spoke to a few people in this room today that I did not have any issues the third day. But it didn't take until I spoke to a few of the board members. Everyone else was kind of hitting a brick wall. It's stating policy, stating liability, that she cannot use her wheelchair in one of your guys' facilities without it being approved. I don't see anybody else getting approved for a new pair of shoes. I don't see anybody else getting approved for a different brand of shoes. That's no different. This was prescribed to her. And yeah.
All right, we will move on to the approval of minutes. We've got a slate of these. We have first off the special school board meeting from April 30th.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Director, we have a motion from Director Spear, second from Director Heidman to approve the special school board meetings from April 30th. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next are the special school board meeting minutes from May 2nd.
So move. Second.
So we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Spear to approve the May 2nd special school board meeting minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And lastly, we have special school board meeting minutes from May 8th, 2024. Yeah, approval of those, please.
Motion.
A second.
So we have a motion from Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Spear to approve the special school board meeting minutes from May 8th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar then, which is fairly lengthy. Just by way of explanation, a lot of these, if we go down to the, I guess if you're on the paper version, the second page, a whole bunch of these under the MSBA policies were just minor tweaks to punctuation, word usage, based on legislative changes, and maybe even a sentence or two, but nothing substantively changed the application or content of the process. Director Heidman and I reviewed all of these along with the rest of the policy committee, and these have all gone through, everything you're seeing has gone through the policy committee. Next, of course, you have the Northern Pines contract up there, and then down below we have where you see policy 407 down to policy 650. None of those changed at all, to the best of my recollection. Director Murtha will keep me honest if I say something wrong here, I imagine. And then finally, we had the decision at policy committee to retire two policies. One was the dress code and appearance one, which is a fairly recent addition back in the day. And the same thing with the school vehicles, drivers, and assistant dress codes. Those are addressed elsewhere in other policies. Those policies, when they were originally created, were somewhat reactionary to situations that occurred. And the global policy sort of umbrellas and covers all of that now, so we don't feel that we need those two policies anymore. So I think that addresses any major questions that would be on the consent calendar, but does anybody have questions? Director Heidman?
I just have one question on policy 522, the Title IX. And Angie may be able to answer this. We deleted the designation of a primary contact or coordinator. So my question is, if someone does have a Title IX issue, who do they contact? Okay. Oh. Okay, thank you. I just. Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question about the trades house bid notice. Have we had no bids on the?
Correct, Marcy Sandoval.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
So we did a bid, no bids received. We opened it up to proposals, first come, first serve, nothing received. This is kind of our last try. There's no minimum on the previous two. There was a minimum of $105,000. We lifted that, but you guys do have the right to reject all bids. So if somebody comes in with a super low bid that we do not want to accept, we can reject that, and then we would go to an auction.
Have we ever been in this situation before?
We have had to do an auction prior to my time, but there has been an auction done.
Director Heidman?
Let's assume no one bids on it. Is there something that we can use it for within the school district? Storage, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here now. I mean, is there something that we could use it for?
And
I don't know, maybe it's too, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, not that I'm aware of, but,
Maybe Reed might have an idea. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out, just seeing if I can catch something. Because I didn't catch anything this weekend, so.
If it goes to auction, we are able to get back a portion of that.
correct,
Right.
right.
That goes back into
The trades budget.
its budget, okay.
So it is preferable to sell it to someone outside the district.
Right.
So we have revenue coming back in to
Right,
support that.
exactly. In the auction, we're gonna take the same risk as not having a minimum, right? There could be the chance that it goes really low and we take a loss.
So who decides who auctions it, and how do you get the word out that this thing's up for auction? How's all that work?
So previously, this is again before my time, but Bill Mose did it, and he does all the advertising, all the gets it out there for us, and then he would host it, so.
At what point would we make that decision to go on?
After the deadline in here is the end of May for us to receive the bids. If we receive none, we'll move forward with the auction.
So how did you promote it? I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong. I don't even know if you promote it. Did we use that realtor you guys talked about? So it was their job to get the word out that this was up for sale?
We put it in the dispatch, we put it on Facebook, they put it in the guide. I don't know if you notice on the back of the guide, there's a little blurb to contact Brad. The community ed guide.
Oh.
And then he has it at his location, also information out for that. So we tried to get it out as best as we could. So we'll do the same thing with this. The notice will go in the paper, we'll do a Facebook ad.
How much was the minimum when you had a minimum?
105.
105,000.
That's right.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty good deal.
If it goes to auction, does that impact next year's project?
It hasn't in the past.
Okay.
But that would be, I guess, a board discussion if you felt like it needed to be brought up.
Wish there was some other way we could think of to promote it.
Well, Bill knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
He'll promote it.
but he's promoting the auction, he's not promoting the home.
Well, that's all there is to auction, so he's gonna.
Right, but I'm thinking, wish there was something more we could do between now and the end of the month to get somebody to.
And this is before my time again, sorry, but we were able to list it on MLS previously, but now since there's no land, you can't do that. So that's why it's not.
Is that part of the new settlement that the realtors just had, that big federal case?
I don't know. So we haven't been able to list it on MLS since I've been here.
Oh, that's probably the problem right
That
there.
is a problem, yeah.
And why, we don't know why that is? or-
Because there's no property with it.
Yeah, I think
no
that's
land.
maybe part of that
okay,
big
Okay.
deal that settled out here a couple months ago with the realtors, and there's all kinds of changes to the MLS and who's in charge of it, and it's a big deal. It's gonna change the real estate world. So, the major thing.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Thanks, Marcy.
I suppose they don't look at it as a piece of property, it's more like a trailer or a park model or something like, I mean, they're not gonna treat it as a home. That's the problem. That's kinda weird.
Disappointing.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Director Ward?
thank you. I always like to look at the donations for the month that we've received in the district, and they range this month from $10 to $14,000. And there's a whole bunch of them on there. And I know that there's one particular project called Birthday Boxes over at the Brainerd Learning Center. Excuse me. That is really quite remarkable that they're providing a birthday present to all their students there, through these donations. So again, just thanks to the community for helping all of us touch students, and that's what all of these do. So thank you for that. I just wanted to make us aware of that.
Great, thank you, Director Ward.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the consent calendar? Hearing none, then all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next up, we have a presentation from Paula Lachlan, our good friend from Partner Ed, on the portrait of the graduate.
And I think, thank you and welcome, Paula. What a night to have this come to fruition, correct?
Yes.
So, if we were started earlier, you got to hear some of our fourth graders read letters to the future 50 years from now. And then we got to hear from an outstanding student at the high school. So when you look at all the work that we've done through our strategic planning, one of the facets of that was creating a portrait of a graduate. And I think you're gonna just see, tonight we've seen exemplars of how that's coming to fruition. So thank you for being with us, Paula.
Thank you so much. Chair Boyle, Superintendent Hahn, board members, it's really good to see you tonight. Thank you so much for allowing me to have some time to share about the continued work that is happening in your district with regards to the portrait of a graduate. Before we go right into it, I thought it might be helpful just to kind of situate us a little bit, provide some context in case those listening aren't familiar with the process that happened last year with the strategic plan, and then in hopes to also make some connections. What is the portrait of a graduate? As Dr. Hahn mentioned, how is that going to continue to complement and support the work that has started with the strategic plan that was approved by the board, and give you a rough draft of what is being recommended for your approval, not tonight, but for you to react to and have some discussion and how it meets the needs of our students. So you'll see on this particular slide, this, if you remember from the strategic plan process last year that we engaged in together, this was really the focal point. And the discussions really centered around this question. And so Denise and Julie and Jennifer, I really want to acknowledge their many different individual and collective contributions with you all. As you know, Denise and Julie are retired superintendents. Jennifer and I are former school board members, and just what we saw collectively in the work that was done by Dr. Hahn and her team, administrators, teachers, staff, community members, and families, and of course, students. And then yourselves, we've had some retreats where we've been able to kind of grapple with some of these issues too. So I just want to, again, thank you for this opportunity to be able to partner with you. So you might recognize this one pager. It is on your website. I know that in some of those retreats, we had a lot of discussion about how would this mission statement that ultimately the district would approve and the board would approve, how could that really be operationalized, so to speak? How could it be accessible so that students, regardless of what grade they're in, or family members, staff members, it was a mission that really spoke to people and really kind of captured what the aspirations were for each and every student. And so you'll see the mission there, and again, this one-pager, this high-level directional roadmap to the future of the schools really is reflective of the input and the feedback and the work of your community. And so you'll see again with the mission, also the core values, and then the district priority goals, so those strategic directions. And again, as a board, we had some really, in my opinion, robust, healthy discussion about being able to suss those out. And ultimately, this is where you landed. And then the learner outcomes. And you recognize some of these from the World's Best Workforce that are kind of an overlay of some of those goals. All right, so that was the strategic plan. How does that connect with the portrait of a graduate? And why did you as a board choose to engage in a portrait of a graduate when you decided to do the strategic plan? So we'll talk about that a little bit. So you'll see here that the portrait of a graduate, different than a strategic plan, in that it defines what are those skills, what are those traits, and what are those issues or topics that we really want our students to know and understand before they graduate from the district. And so, again, with community input, with student input, and now you'll have a chance to see the draft and the recommended result. What are those aspirations? So another way to think about it is as of a parent, and many parents, and maybe some of you included, when you're raising your child or your children, you think about what are those things that I really want my child to embody. So you might have some bigger goals, like I want them to learn how to play an instrument. I want them to be active in a group activity or sport. I want them to learn how to manage money. So those are some bigger strategic, maybe goals for your child, right? But then the portrait of a graduate, again, transferring it to the parent analogy, might look like, you know, I really want my child to be responsible. I really want my child, as they grow up, to act with integrity and be trustworthy. I really want my child to have compassion for others, and I want them to be a self-advocate. I want them to be able to use their voice for good. So those are just some examples, but that is just kind of a parallel analogy in terms of how the portrait of a graduate characteristics complement and support the things that have been identified in your strategic plan. So another way we often hear it is it's the centerpiece of the strategic plan. It's how we bring all of those things to life. So a teacher might say, how can I make sure that our students are having the opportunities to engage in critical thinking or to engage to be a collaborator who XYZ, whatever those might be. So that community's vision. And we'll transition here. You'll see Dr. Han that did presenting her part of the process when we met to really have the discussion. What are those skills? What are those attributes that we want for our students? And so Julie Kritz and I were here in February and met with a diverse group of community stakeholders and staff. And then there were several other steps along the way that engaged different stakeholder voice, which I will let Dr. Han talk about. But we started it really kind of like big picture. we had plates, and I forgot my show and tell. We had plates for everybody, and with a Sharpie, they identified what are those attributes, those skills, those things that we really want students to be able to know and do before they graduate from our district. And then from there, we kept funneling down until ultimately they reached consensus about what those skills and attributes would be. And Dr. Hahn, I'll let you kind of speak to, after that meeting, some of the engagement and feedback that took place.
And prior to this meeting, just so you know, we had worked with Paula and Julie to really generate a list of what they called attributes. So what are common attributes that get associated with the portrait of a graduate? I reached out to Matt Killian from our chamber, and we actually partnered with the Blue Ox Leadership Academy. So we looked at area businesses and leaders that had gone through the Leadership Academy, and we started with their high level. So we went to the business stakeholders in our community and said, what are you looking for from a graduate? What attributes do you feel that they need to have to be successful once they lead post-high school or leave post-high school? So we started with that, and then we brought this group actually together in February, and the diversity in that group is, you know, we had the head of Essentia, we had the head of Bremer, we had different HR directors in the room, we had parents in the room, we had some principals. You'll see Director Heidman was a participant in there, and what we did is we brought forward that data from that original chamber input to say, here's what our business owners have identified, and they really wrestled with that, and they were charged then with the work from Paula and Julie to start narrowing that down and really speak from their lens. So if I'm the CEO of Essentia, what was important to me? If I'm the HR director of Klaus Stamping, what are we looking for here? If I'm a parent, this is what I'm looking for. So they really narrowed that down. Then from there, we took that to a group of students, high school students, and we also partnered with Christina Lundgren, who's been working, and Principal Rusk, really working with our career pathway work that's happening at the secondary level, because we really felt the portrait of the graduate and our career pathways needed to be braided together to really, if we're going to be working on that portrait of a graduate, that'll be reflective of the Brainerd Lakes area. So we turned that back over to the students. The students really then wrestled with attributes, but even more so, those attributes were pretty narrowed down. What the students wrestled with and had great conversation with is, how do you define that? What does that look like? We as adults can say that in our language, but really what were the high school students saying about it, and how would they define it? And so those are the discussions we've had, and I'm very grateful to Ms. Vandeputty, who's sitting in the room, Nikki Harmer, who's another teacher at the high school that got really involved, who's one of our stakeholders, and Ms. Lundgren and Ms. Russ, because all the student input and all that, they really started to say, well, then what does that look like? And so you're going to see as Paula moves us forward, really even how we got to the image of what we have today that's reflective of our portrait of a graduate. And my vision of this is once we can say these are the attributes that we are clearly going to focus on and ensure that every graduate from Brainerd Public Schools has, is we're going to back this all the way up to pre-K. So when you look at these attributes and we start working in pre-K, we're going to show how these attributes are taught and how they're reinforced. And when we go to recognize students with Student of the Month or Student of the Trimester, we're going to be highlighting these attributes. These are going to be building. So by the time that a student graduates from Brainerd Public Schools, we can say from pre-K through graduation, these have been the things that we've enforced, and here's why we've enforced and taught those things with our students. So I think the work is, and it's just timely. Again, when you look at Career Pathways full launch in the fall of '24, is really exciting.
Another thing I think that is really effective that we've seen really support the work in districts when they have both the strategic plan, which of course all districts do, but when they also have a really clear and known portrait of a graduate. And when I say known, I mean known beyond just people that are in the schools, but again, families, community members, right, and can really articulate it. It really helps with that alignment, right? We talk about that strategic plan being your roadmap, and that all things should go back to that strategic plan. The portrait of a graduate sometimes is referred to the North Star of your strategic plan. What are those things that we want our students to embody, and how do we, as Dr. Hahn said, kind of have those interconnected? So With that, please know that this is a draft. So just want to walk through and present this to you just as kind of a first glance for you to have some discussion and eventually coming back to adopt and approve a portrait of a graduate. But these are the 5 anchors, if you will, the attributes. There's kind of a river theme, if you can kind of see. I will take all responsibility of poor graphics because that's what's mine. So please know, again, this is a draft. It can always be updated and changed. So, and then I'll invite too, Dr. Hahn and Director Heidemann, as you were there, if you want to add in any context to what you heard people say when they identified these anchors as being really important and really salient for Brainerd Public School students. So the communicator, or a communicator, so that ability to really be clearly, to be effective, both in your communication, speaking, but also listening, including body language, all the ways in which we as human beings can communicate, and the ability to really shift and know our audience, so to speak, knowing what is more relevant or is going to be the most impactful, and being able to have those skills to adapt swiftly. Critical thinker. So there was a lot of discussion about this, and I think the board, we've had some discussion too about, of course, schools are there to help our students learn, but how are we teaching our students to think? How are we teaching them to be really critical consumers of all of the information that is out there, knowing that all of it is not as dependable as others? And so how do they really develop those skills to be able to know what is fact and what really can provide that foundation for their reasoning? Of course, being open-minded, being open to other perspectives. We talked a lot about empathy and being able to build empathy with one another through sharing our stories, sharing our perspectives, and building bridges when we don't agree, but where we can understand. All right, dependable. So this being just that well-being and safety of ourselves, others, having respect for spaces, and then also being honest in our communication and how we speak, how we act, how we behave, and then our intentions, and kind of holding up that mirror to our own behavior and knowing that our impact might be different than our intentions, and how do we work as individuals to make sure that those are more in alignment. Collaborator. So knowing that even with all the technology, the ability to work with other people is critical. And there are a lot of people in the room who spoke about just that skill and what does that look like to be able to work with others effectively. And then resiliency, or resilient. So again, how do we give our students opportunities to lean into when they make mistakes and continue to learn, and that they're not defined by when they didn't make a certain goal, but that inner fortitude and that drive to want to learn and be better than the day before is ultimately kind of what's pushing them ahead. And then you'll see on the left there is the mission statement. And so those are the 5 anchors, the 5 rocks that have been kind of captured that reflect all of the feedback and the input from the different constituencies.
And I found interesting in the journey is really just getting the input from HR directors. And then the 2 HR directors that we had with us in February reached out to their Lakes area group to kind of get more of that input or that insight of what are they looking for. And then again, going back to faculty, and it was very interesting, again, in my sense and in the other staff that are involved, the student voice in this, to see how much they were truly aligned. with one another. But again, our work was really to have this, when we look at all the different attributes, you can list hundreds of them, that they kind of merged on these 5 anchors, and then really allowing our students to put into that language of what does that mean? What is it reflective in their world to be, dependable or to be a collaborator? And then again, getting that feedback back, how much that aligned. The image to the top right is our career pathway work. So we're looking at, there's those 5 different pathways. So if you look at tying that together with the 5 different anchors, again, this is just really a reflective. So if I'm a graduate of Brainerd Public Schools, and I put that portfolio together at the end of 4 years, there's a lot of things that I can say about how I'm career ready, college ready, life ready, because of the education opportunities provided.
Heidi, can you tell us what those 5 components are?
So these are 5 career pathway explorations, and I'm not going to put Christine on the spot. But what's going to happen is through those 5 pathways, there's ways starting in 9th grade for students to explore those areas of industry. So be it business, and it used to be agriculture. What does it say now?
Agriculture and nature.
Yep, agriculture, nature, creative. So if you think about arts and music, and then when you get to design and building, and then service. So like service, for example, that may be nursing. So as I start into 9th grade, starting in the fall, there's gonna be lots of opportunity to explore different careers that exist through those pathways. The other exciting part is where I believe, and I know Ms. Russ stepped out, but we're at 21 credential opportunities. So through different pathways, I also might have the opportunity, so I'll pick service again through nursing. That happened this school year. I might get my CNA license, so I'm coming out already credentialed out of that career pathway where I can go be career ready when I leave high school, or even career ready and starting. We have a lot of our students with CNAs that go right to work this summer, right to work in the school year. So very intentional work, and this work is actually happening throughout the region. And we have a career pathways. Amy Schoblat, she actually presented to you at the school board level to kind of explain that work. But in our region, in partnership with Sourcewell, that's what's happening through all 23 districts in Region 5, is really concerted efforts about careers. And those pathways are reflective of the industry and the jobs that reside within our region. So tying that together, and then again, when you think about working with HR directors in the Lakes region, what are you looking for? What's important? Where are you seeing employees succeed? Where are they stumbling? And then again, our students tonight, if between the 4th graders and Reese, you're seeing exemplars, and Miss Everly sitting with us too. These are our students that are going to do amazing things. So I'm excited. I think it's been there's been a lot of input on this, a tremendous amount of input and fine tuning, even down to the graphics. I believe, I don't know if that was you, Wendy, or Nikki, that talked about this, the river's more reflective. This is a journey that students are going to take. These are going to be the anchors that they land on. That was all done very intentionally through their work.
And if I may, what I think I really appreciated about hearing the feedback is that, so we know our schools, and again, I know this is really important to the board, it's identified as one of the goals. So academic excellence, yes, that's a non-negotiable. And knowing that these are students as human beings, right? How are we going to really support them in how they show up and work with one another? And I just thought that was, the risk of sounding a little cheesy, just beautiful that it was academic excellence and that it wasn't binary, and it really included kind of those characteristics, right, of who we are as people.
Just questions for Paula. Go ahead and free fire.
Just to answer Director Brecken on that little pinwheel up there on the right. Remember when we sat in that class and we were handed all the classes that students could take?
Yes.
That's, I think, what Dr. Hahn was talking about, all these different classes. I mean, that almost, we both commented, almost looked like a junior college class description. I mean, there's a lot to do there.
And so all those classes fit into one of those
There's
or
classes that are, there's
overlapping
classes,
too, I'm sure.
so if I think I'm going into a career service or I want to explore, there's a whole course list.
Got it,
Identified, but then there's also, if that's really where I want to go, I can even get more in depth, or I can start to earn credentials in that area. But we learn very on, and you're hearing from our students now, and I think higher ed's feeling it, you know, we're educating students for jobs that don't even exist yet. And so our students are demanding more of, well, let me explore more, let me try more, let me get my hands on more, let me see more, let me, you know, have a job shadow. So this is very intentional work, and we're also learning our employers are really looking for that. These attributes, if you would sit with I mean, it was very powerful to have the head of two of the largest employers in our area, along with HR directors from different companies, having these discussions with parents and teachers sitting in the same room. Of these are what we're looking for from our future workforce coming forward. So, again, it melds really well together. I think it's a culmination of a lot of work from both ways. This career pathway work's been ongoing to finally get launched. It's 4 to 5 years worth of work finally coming to fruition. So the timing of our strategic plan, Portrait of the Graduate, super exciting. Super exciting.
I do have a question on the
Yes.
dependable.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm confused.
me too.
I'm very confused. Dependable to me means showing up on time, doing the work, etc. But yet we're talking about, at least steer me in the right direction. I just don't see the connection
I don't
between.
either. If you looked at the definition, I don't think that's gonna be it, but okay, go ahead.
Understand, but I mean, I'm just, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around dependable and then what we're talking about underneath there.
So
So
I
steer me the right direction.
I think it's an excellent question. I cannot, of course, speak to kind of all of the thoughts that went behind that. My read on it is another way to say consistency, right? That that we will be dependable on how we are showing up. So what that looks like in our actions and our words and our intentions. But again, I don't want to speak for kind of what some of the rationale behind it was, but I think that this is exactly the kind of questions I think to be asking, right? We've been working on this for a long time. You're seeing this fresh, so that's the kind of feedback and the reactions, right? Because Dr. Heidemann, you have the question, likely others are going to as well. So
And I can speak for like our students and the employers. It's more than showing up. Because I would say, dependable, when you hear somebody, they show up. And you heard the students say, and? You know, if I'm dependable and somebody says I'm dependable, it's more than just showing up because I can physically take up space. So if you think, and again, a lot of this fine tuning of definitions came from the student voice. Now we could tell you, employer HR would say, well, the first thing they have to do is show up. So you can, right, so you can put that in there, but that's where you're getting some of the more in-depth. And you think about, there's probably 10 words we could use for dependable. And that's some of the wrestling that happened too. There's 10 attributes that might fine tune that. Just like resilient, boy, we talked about perseverance, we talked about grit, we talked about, and these have kind of how they narrow to that anchor. But that is one that they went through. But we'd argue as adults, like, first thing to do is show up. Kids would say, and then what? That's how that definition expanded.
So what are we looking at here? This is a draft. What does that mean?
So,
I mean, personally, I think communicator, critical thinker, dependable collaborator, and resilient is excellent. It's terrific. But I agree with Randy. Like, dependable, does that mean you're committed? Dependable, trustworthy, consistent? You know, some of these, you value safety and well-being of yourself and others and spaces. Ooh.
So that's
I don't
another
know.
definition of respect. So that's where they talked about if I'm dependable, I'm respectful. So this is why it's a draft. I mean,
That's
eventually you as the board are gonna have to
I
approve.
mean, everything
so
else
there's,
is terrific. It's a great idea. I think it's well done. And I don't know that we have to get hung up on this, but I do agree with you. If I was a kid, I'd be like, is that what that means? You know, in my world, that means a lot. Truthfulness is in there. That's a good one. Sincerity, that's a good one. But the rest of it's a little bit confusing to me about being dependable. Dependable is like I can count on you. If you have to open the McDonald's at 6 o'clock in the morning, we have to be able to depend that you're gonna be there at 6 o'clock, cause at 6:10, it's not good enough. And I think that that should be clear, but other than that, this thing's terrific. Good job. Said this is gonna be the funnest part.
A lot of it came from the Warrior Way too, a lot of the information.
A lot of
Yeah,
discussion.
and I don't
about
think you
that.
have to tear it up or anything.
Oh, no.
I think it'd be, we could put
Maybe
the,
clean that up just a little bit.
we could put the definition of dependable back out there. And say,
Well, and Director, if I may, I think it's a both and in terms of being able to understand more of what the students were wanting to convey. As we know, right, language changes over time, and generationally, we are a different generation than perhaps the students. And so making sure that we still can honor and capture their intent and making sure that it's accessible and understood by everyone.
See, and what I like about that first part of it is, right, it is really important to show up, but it's also important if you're working at McDonald's at 6 o'clock, you show up, but you value that business. You value that space and you work hard to keep it looking good and safe and clean. And you value.
Take ownership.
Yeah, you take ownership,
Well, that,
right.
maybe we should just put that in there.
That's a good definition.
You know, I mean, that's exactly what you're saying.
Mhm.
You're right. I mean,
Yep,
it's
you
100
take
you're
ownership
100%
in that
right.
job that you're doing.
Maybe we need to change the word dependable, and we're trying to change what's underneath dependable. Maybe it's dependable, that's, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out.
I think your 5 core anchors or attributes, there was a lot of wrestling. You said in that room, Randy, as I think we got it down to
Yeah.
15 to go out in the next round of surveys. So I think if we're there at bringing back the definition, because again, this is the wrestling that's occurred between employer, student, but I think we're at the point, what I'd recommend is bringing it back to that student group and just say, here's the feedback from the school board. So we have a group of about 90 kids that are super engaged in this right now.
Oh, cool.
So here the school board thought when they read dependable, they should have seen the words show up, ownership, consistency. And let them wrestle that and bring that back.
Commitment.
Commitment.
Follow up. I mean, it's like we could just keep going. There's a real trend. I brought it up at our last thing of, you know, it's not just right now, it's maybe the last 5, I'd never seen this before 5, 7 years ago, where you just don't show up for work. And then we're worried about you, so people are calling and you don't call back and you won't return a text and you won't return an email and you just never show up. And then there's the other ones that just don't come in for 2 days and then show up on the 3rd day, their boss is mad at them and they don't understand why. They can't understand what they've done wrong. And I feel as though if we're truly going to get them ready for the work world, I don't know. I mean, if you're the, you know, the dental hygienist is supposed to clean my teeth at 8 o'clock in the morning and you don't show up for 2 days, I think when you show back up, someone's gonna be a little disappointed. Now, they've had you scheduled, you can't just not show. And I think that somehow we need to, I don't know if this is the end-all, save-all document here, but
Well, I think,
should at least let them know.
so I have show up, consistent, ownership, commitment. Did I miss one?
I don't think so. And they don't have to all be in there. But
Well, I think our goals, like I said, we have about 90 students right now. We're super, super engaged.
Well, and I think to Director Brecken's point, you know, I'm trying to envision being a student, and I might think, okay, I've got science lab, right? I know I'm going to be working with a partner, right? Yes, let's hope they show up. That's, you know, kind of a given maybe, but then I really hope that they are going to, like, I can feel safe around them to take risks or to fail, right? And that they're going to be honest and sincere and treat me in a way that is going to support my learning. And so that, I'm just kind of thinking about what, you know, what are some ways in which it could be interpreted by others. But I think going back directly to the students and asking, I think is key.
Wouldn't your example fall under more of the communicator and the collaborator? You know, I'm just.
Yeah, I think, well.
I'm just hung up on dependable, that's all.
And I think they're also interconnected in one way or another, right? It's,
Any other questions? I love the feedback. This will be
I
fun.
Yes. So I like it. I think it's remarkable. Thank you for the work, everybody that's done it. I did have a question on the readiness, career ready, college ready, life ready. I think those are remarkable, especially the career and life ready. If I'm a student and I look at that college ready, you know, and I don't want to go to college, I want to do a trade, I want to do a dental hygienist, I want to do something other than college. Was there a discussion all about the word college?
Well, so.
Or post-secondary, or whatever?
And so the words that we're using with the pathways themselves are career ready, college ready, life ready. So no matter what my pathway experience is, I might choose career, I might choose life, I might choose college, but the job through all of that is to ensure that no matter what the student choice is, they're gonna have that option. Because we have a lot of students who are choosing college, we have a lot of students who are choosing career, a lot of students who are just gonna go out in the workforce to try to be, you know, learn life and get ready for life. So that's the whole intent of those pathways. When you hear pathways, that is what they say.
Okay.
Career ready, college ready, life ready.
I think too, I think they've renamed a lot of that stuff. Like if you go to Staples to learn how to run heavy equipment, it's college. I mean, it's, they've retermed it compared to when, in the old days.
Yep.
And so I think pretty much all those programs are all considered college. Am I right on that?
I would say that that's probably pretty.
Is that the deal these days?
No, they're technical college for technical training.
So it's still,
So, but the pathway option is to really get you that experience. So then you can pick any of those three options. And it's common language we're hearing. You're gonna hear it regionally for sure, and then should be hearing that statewide. If we're implementing career pathways, it should ensure that every student is either career ready, college ready, or life ready.
Okay,
as long as they're ready.
That's the key word in that.
Yeah, important word there.
Keyword.
Thank you for this work. I know it's really difficult to come up with fewer words rather than more. It's definitely a labor of love. And I did jot down, as we were talking about dependable, the words conscientious, responsible, and respectful.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
And one observation, and I'm probably the only person in the room that this is going to bother, but we've got 3 nouns and 2 adjectives. So we've got a communicator and a critical thinker and a collaborator, and then we've got 2 adjectives.
We've gone through all these.
Okay.
We've had actions and verbs and nouns. And so I think Paula at one point probably wanted to hit delete on her email because I think with the inputs coming in, and that's what was great about Wendy Vanapudi and Nicole Harmer, who are language arts teachers. Yeah, I think our first draft we got an F on. They would have graded us when Paula and I are like, they're like, do you realize you have all these different? So we'll continue to work on that. The interesting thing is, at least when we got to these 5, it seemed like our language arts and our students, and we were all like, oh, right, that's pretty.
Yeah.
And my whole goal through this, and it's a goal that'll get passed on, is that these are things that we, it doesn't matter if I'm 3, I can start to teach what it means to be dependable. I can start to teach what it means to collaborate with others. It looks different and the language we use is different, but that core anchor doesn't change from pre-K to 21, actually, 22 now for our students. But like you said, to pick the anchors and define the anchors are.
So how will this work show up in the classroom?
So some of the work is already showing up.
Okay.
So when you think about, we had students that were awarded for character traits, or when you think about some of the SABRs in the screening, these are going to be attributes that we make sure that no matter what we're focusing on, or we agree to focus on as priority anchors in the district. So it could come through, let's say we have 2 students who get into an argument or whatever, and they have to go back through our restorative circle. Well, how are we communicating on that? How did you show that you could be a collaborator? There's so many things that we can infuse it into. And then you can just think about the higher level. If I'm a student that's a senior at Brainerd High School 4 years from now, and I'm mapping out my career pathway experience, and I basically create my portfolio of these are the things or my strengths, they better have a laundry list of strengths about communicating, critical thinking, being dependable, those things.
Okay,
Great. Lots of lessons. And it gives us focus. It gives focus just like the strategic plan gave focus.
Thank you.
Great.
Good list.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you. Good to see
Good
you all.
work.
Responsible, conscientious, and
Respectful.
respectful. Thank you.
So you're gonna take this, Dr. Hahn, back to the students?
I am. I'm going to say the school board is questioning the definition
Well, you
of
never got out here
dependable.
this early before.
Right, right. But maybe she wants to stay for the school board retreat discussion, Paul.
We need you.
Yes, get out your calendar.
Thank you so much. We'll take that back. Our goal, hopefully, we'll bring, I don't think we'll need a full presentation from Paula, but we'll bring this back to the board in June. Because ideally, we would like to have this solidified, so again, when we launch in August of 2024, the work is ready to roll.
Perfect.
Great.
And I would assume this will also be some sort of a button or something on the district website.
Oh,
to be
gosh.
accessible and whatnot, so.
And I think there's the career pathway, there's so many ways to infuse that. And if you come to looking at some of our elementary principals back there and Martha and early childhood, when we think about character traits, lots of ways to
Is
put this work
something-
forward.
Is this something that could be put in the booklet for career pathways as well as within some of the handbooks that we're gonna be talking about tonight, or wasn't that part of the plan, Dr. Hahn?
It'll probably be in next year's handbook.
Okay.
But it is part of, the goal is to have it part of the career pathway process.
Right now, in
Correct.
this
Correct.
year's class choices.
Starting in the fall of 2024.
Cool.
Ms. Bennett's excited.
All right, we will move on because of that excitement to new business. And item number 1 in new business is the approval of the ratification of the 2024 through 2026 Ed Minnesota Professionals, Education Minnesota Association of Brainerd Professionals Contract Agreement, as presented by Angie Bennett.
Thank you. So the first thing with this contract is they did have a change in their title. They used to be Education Minnesota Confidential Group, which contained 4 employee types. They have since gone to the Bureau of Mediation Services to have a title change, and that was part of our last contract that we had with the unit. Due to being labeled as confidential, their roles didn't really meet that statutory requirement, so we kind of talked through a different title. So they did move forward with, as Kevin said, Education Minnesota Association of Brainerd Professionals. We are going to, of course, shorten that because that's what we do, EMABP. So, as you guys saw in the red line that I sent over on Friday, you can see the adjustments made within the contract. There was an increase in salary scale for both years. We did update the position list to remove the system specialist position. That was a position, if you recall, that was added due to CARES funding to try and get some of our systems more efficient for use during that time, and she did an excellent job, has since resigned. That is Carly Hoffman, and we thank her for her work in that role. We did do a change to vacation days. There was a little bit of a switch on the accrual years to provide additional vacation time starting on year 4 versus year 5. And a couple little language cleanups. This was a one and done group, which was fabulous.
It was a very good evening.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, we were able to caucus and come to an agreement. So it was great. Any questions?
Director Heidman?
And this is more for transparency, and I've talked to both Director Boyle and mentioned it to Angie as well. I don't like blindsiding people. So the public needs to be aware of the fact, and I've learned something just by looking at this stuff and then started asking questions. I'm just gonna use this for an example, and tell me if I'm way off base or not. So let's say teachers get a 2% raise, okay? That also means that the steps contract that we have, the appendix back in page 24 and 25 of the contract, those also are increased by a certain percent, maybe not by 2%, and maybe by 1.5% or whatnot.
Correct.
So in reality, we're giving a teacher maybe a 3.5% increase. And again, I'm not here to debate the contract. I'm just here to, because I didn't realize this, and it was kind of eye-opening to me in a way.
And it's very typical, as you'll see in all of our contracts and across the state, that they do have steps, lanes, if applicable, and then there's an overall kind of handbook or contract increase. And so kind of the reasoning behind that is the steps are based on years of experience in the role. The increase to the contract is more based on trying to give more for cost of living adjustment. So it's increasing the salaries to kind of keep up with, as to the best of our ability, some of the inflation amounts.
And all of these numbers fit within our budget, so.
Yes.
Again, my raising the question wasn't here to throw darts at anybody, it was just
That's a good question.
simply to make people aware.
And kind of coming from private into public,
Oh,
it's a different story. So,
Yeah, so that
that's
was
a good
kinda-
question.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions about it?
We need to move the contract. I'll move acceptance of the EMABP contract.
Second?
So we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Heidman to approve the ratification of the 2024 through 2026 EMABP contract as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Angie. Next, you get to stay in the
Yep,
chair
I
for
get to
Brainerd utilization of Healthiest You.
Yep. So this one is kind of a dual purpose line item. Part of it is to talk about, which really is the action item, is the recommendation for an insurance premium increase. So I'll start there, and then I'll talk a little bit about Healthiest You, which we've talked about at previous our board meetings, but I did send you some additional information about utilization, and that's also linked to the school board agenda for people to look through. I'm not going to go through that whole presentation, just kind of give you a synopsis of how it's going. So really, in regard to insurance premiums, we met April 29th to meet as an insurance committee, which is a group of individuals that we attempt to get some context of all different employee groups. So everybody has a voice at the table. We also have National Insurance Services, which is our insurance broker that leads those meetings. They provide us all the information on data, claims, experience, how much we're generating in the fund versus how much we're taking out. We are self-insured. So this last year and the year previous, actually, we've had higher claims costs. Unfortunately, in kind of looking at the historical data, this seems to be like every 7 years, we kind of go whoop, and then we start to come back down. The good news is they're forecasting that it is starting to level off, which the hope then is it'll go back down again. If you just looked at the claims themselves, the recommended increase was 13.6%, which is high for self-insured. I know for those in the private industry, it is not. But it is high for kind of our school district in general. We do have a very healthy fund balance. It's currently at 46.7% funded, which the same recommendation of 25% is for that fund as well. So we did have a discussion about utilizing that fund to some extent to try and buffer the employees as well as the district themselves in paying those additional premiums. So we considered the 4%, 4.6, 7.6, 10.6, and 13.6 and kind of looked through what that would do to the premiums. Had a discussion about that. Overall, the committee did not want to take the entire 13.6. They wanted to leverage the fund balance to a point, and they're recommending an 8%, and that's basically just rounding up to 7.6, just to make it
Easy math.
easier. Director Boyles, you were there at the meeting as well. Did I miss anything?
Nope, that summarizes it quite eloquently with, I would add the caveat that as a general rule, National Insurance Services, who is our, counselor and vendor for this kind of thing, a really sharp group of people that really understands what trend data is doing all over the place. So I think, a lot of times they make recommendations, and in this case, I felt like that team felt really good about where we ended up in terms of the balance between leveraging the fund to the extent possible. I mean, that fund has grown significantly over the last couple of years, specifically during the COVID years when nobody went to the doctor and we actually were able to bankroll quite a bit of money during those years. So similar to the general fund, same conversation we're having, right? It's, that was a rainy day fund, it's raining. And so, that's, what I would say is that I personally came out of that meeting feeling very confident with the recommendation that was made.
I did as well. To give some additional good news for the future, hopefully, and then I'll move for action, is the Healthiest You. We've talked about this. This is a new program I implemented. We did use some of the fund money, I guess, to purchase this program. We've had outstanding utilization of this program, rave reviews across the board. So they work with general medicine, which is the highest utilization, dermatology, nutrition, and mental health. We've had utilization across all 4 areas with the highest in general medicine, and kind of looking at through that presentation, I guess, that I shared with you as well. I did notice the bulk people, if they hadn't used this, would have gone to urgent care. So that's really deflecting a lot of dollars from our fund, as well as providing a huge benefit to our employees. Zero cost and very quick. It's all telehealth. But the response rate is amazing. A little bit longer with mental health, but that's to be expected, just due to across the board waits for that service. But even that, you're getting better responses by far than you do in the clinic at this point. There is, some differences between that service as compared to in-person. But we're on track to have redirected about $200,000 in claims from our insurance fund just by using this. So we've already paid for the program, and now we're really getting the benefit from it. So
just
exciting.
A couple things I would tack on to that. First is we implemented this for staff essentially around the beginning of the school year.
September.
So it's really, really new to a lot of people. NIS and district staff with Angie's leadership did an outstanding job of getting the word out, so that utilization is not an accident. It was a lot of hard work by a lot of people that had to learn something new on the fly. Second thing is from a cost perspective, we didn't really dip into the fund, as I recall, to pay for this. What we did was we repurposed money we were using for the grand rounds, whatever that was called.
Right, we did
So
eliminate
in a sense, we took money we were already spending for a second opinion service that nobody was using. And like 24 people used it in a year. And we were paying like $100,000 for it or something. And when we switched to this, which we're paying around $125,000 for, I think.
Right, yeah.
And as you can see, we've already doubled the return on that investment in terms of deferred or defrayed claims costs that would have gone to an urgent care or some other medical practitioner had we not had this service in place. I mean, we don't get to sit at this table and look at slam dunks very often. This is a slam dunk. Somebody should go teach the T-Wolves how to do that at home, but.
And just for future, we're also looking at getting a different program for prescriptions going to try to get some of those really highly expensive prescriptions at either a much reduced or free cost to employees if they choose to go that route versus using the insurance. So that still hasn't been implemented yet, but is something that's being researched. I will give all kudos to Mackenzie Saylor, who is the benefit specialist. She is fantastic at getting the word out and really has been promoting Healthiest You and has gotten a lot of great feedback. So I will not take the credit.
Win-win across the board. This is getting more people access to more information, better care, faster, and saving the district and the people money.
Yep. Yeah.
Go ahead, Director Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to echo on what you said. I talked to some of our employees that have used the service and are absolutely thrilled with the services that we receive, the medical services that we receive. The time, the expertise, I can get a prescription right now, all of it is just positive. I did notice as I looked at the reviewing the charts, the research and whatever, and that's really a great job on whoever put. Did you put that up, Angie?
No, that was NIS. Our
Okay,
insurance
I mean, it's
broker did
really,
that. Yep.
I did notice though that the heaviest users are females.
Yep.
We gotta get our males to get on that stick here for crying out loud.
Telehealth is hard to handle chainsaw injuries with.
I understand. But, and also.
We are getting some participation though.
Pardon?
We are getting some participation
Yes,
from you.
absolutely.
So that was
What
good.
percent of your staff
I
is?
was just.
70-30?
Yeah,
That's probably right along with the
If it's
demographics.
70-30, then it's pretty
yeah,
close.
what, do you know what the percentage is, Angie?
I get that too, I understand that
But it
part.
includes
I just-
families, it's all noses in
understand
a
that part.
household.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I
I was thinking too.
And I'm hoping that we continue, and I think all of the labor organizations have promoted it and are talking about it with their members. And I think as we move forward with this, it'd be good to have some individual testimony from our own people to spread the word, so to speak, or whatever as
Yeah,
well.
And I think they are. I mean, I think that that's our greatest asset in spreading the
Yeah.
word is our employees. That good experience spreads very fast as quickly as, well, maybe not as quick as the negative experiences, but it's going through the buildings, and really we haven't had a negative comment on it, which is phenomenal.
Angie, when you talk about the prescription program, just kind of taking a look at that, is that under this umbrella of Healthiest You, or is that
No,
a completely
it is through
separate?
another
Okay.
separate, because we do have a large amount of our funds go to prescription drugs.
sure,
And there
yeah.
are some of those specialized drugs that are just ridiculously expensive. And so we are looking at different ways to mitigate that cost, both to
Okay.
the fund as well as to the employee.
I mean, the upshot is that what they're trying to do is identify, it's about a half a dozen highly utilized, high-cost drugs like using Humira, personal example. My own son uses that. You know, it's $2,700 per injection. He's doing those weekly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so when we took school board members off the district health plan, that, you know,
Worked out well for you?
yeah, it paid for my $400 a month salary. So the idea is that there are these alternative mail order, essentially, pharmacies that are in Canada, UK, and other areas where, oddly enough, the pharmaceutical is manufactured in the US, sent to Canada, then resent back here, and
It's cheaper.
yeah,
Much
and we get it
cheaper
at
price.
somewhere around a 40 to 45% discount over what they would pay. So it's some strategic stuff like that that they talk about doing.
Crazy.
So we just haven't figured out the mechanics of that yet.
Did you say with the fund balance is at 43.6?
It is
So after you guys tap it, what's it gonna be? Recommended is 25?
7, and then I actually.
I mean, is it going down to 25 or is it going down to
No,
38?
I
It's
don't recall,
going
it's
down
definitely not going below
to-
25. It's gonna be, I think it was still gonna be in the high 20s or low 30s somewhere, if memory serves.
Yeah, we'll still be a million over, it looks like. Marcy, you're gonna have to chime in, 33.4? 36.5. Oh, I was looking at the wrong line, yep. So,
I have one
go
more.
down 10%.
Okay. I have another question is, how come September was so,
Because we introduced it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
everybody just tried it?
Well,
but they logged in, so we
My
had
elbow
to.
hurts, I think I'm gonna try the new thing.
well, the other thing is,
You registered, a lot of people registered for it.
I was looking at the visits.
Yeah.
It was the
Well-
biggest month, I just was curious,
can I tell you what happens in September?
Yeah.
Sure.
People go back,
We
we all
all
come
with
back
kids.
into classrooms with one another, and all the kids are with us,
Oh,
and all the
everybody gets sick.
germs, and now we're all, like, September is the first, because we haven't been in that environment for
Right,
3 months.
Oh, is that the deal, huh?
Yeah.
Well, there you go, that's answered my
And
question.
that's a pretty common,
Yeah, and people wanted to.
Because everybody registered in September,
Mhm.
big time, but then that claim, that use,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, February is pretty close. And it got kinda close in the winter, but September is just like, wow,
no, we did all. But
cool.
September is a big, and Christmas, because everybody waits till holiday break to get sick, and then predictable patterns in schools.
So, I guess, as far as the agenda item, it's action on the insurance premium increase. It is ultimately a school board decision. So any amount of increase, is on the table. I'm just here to present the insurance committee's recommendation.
It's a good middle-of-the-road solution that doesn't increase the district's costs beyond what I think we're comfortable with, given the budgetary situation that we're in. There was buy-in from all the different constituent groups that were at the committee level. There wasn't, you know, like a lot of times when we have these discussions, you have different groups that have very different points of view, but it felt pretty good. And like I said, I tend to lean really heavily on Aaron Casper and his team at NIS. They're extraordinarily good at what they do. And Aaron is also a school board member in his own right, so that it gives him a little bit of additional insight as well. So my recommendation would be that we adopt this as presented.
Chair Boyle, did you say that the stakeholder groups were pretty much in favor of all that?
That's correct. There's a little bit of dialogue and some slide ruling going on.
Yeah.
As of course, any of the bargaining units would like to see, you know, things that come in a little bit more favorable where the district takes on a bigger share. And then, of course, the district voice has to chime in and say, yeah, but the reality is, you know, that's gonna put us behind the 8 ball the next time we sit at a negotiations table. So it felt really good this time around.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
My apologies, I flipped pages too quickly. So we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the revised insurance premiums and healthiest utilization presentation as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie.
Thanks, Angie.
Up next will be Director Teesey with the approval of the purchase of the high school farm property parcels as listed from Crow Wing County.
Apologize, in your packet, but just a quick handout for information as we're talking about it for reference.
All in favor?
Okay, not a new subject. We've talked about this before. Probably going on 7 months or so ago, I was at the board meeting here talking about the request from Crow Wing County for us to consider the parcels on Highway 25, formerly known as the high school farm. So since then, and Director Donlinger and Director Brecken, we've had this at Long Range Facility Committee meetings where we've talked about the high school farm parcels themselves. The general context of the situation is that Crow Wing County has had these on their tax forfeit roll for decades. I mean, 60, 70, 80 years that they've been tax forfeit, and we've been using it as the high school farm for such a period of time. And every year we come to the table and we renew a lease. And so the request from Crow Wing County and Commissioner Coring was that we consider just buying the land if we're so inquired. And we, as you may know out there, there's quite a few buildings that we've constructed in partnership with the FFA and 4-H organizations over the years. We still use it as a maintenance facility for winter operations. So when the snow flies, we bring our plow trucks and our lawnmowers and tractors and everything out there for a warm location for us to do maintenance. And so we still use it. The senior center utilizes the greenhouse for their plant sale, which is invaluable. They've presented many times here for that as well. So what's in front of you today is a board action for us to buy the land value or buy the land only because we've already built the buildings. So the agreement that we worked on with the Land Services Department at Crow Wing County would be for us just to buy the land, again, because they do not own the buildings, we do. So this just cleans it up. It gives us the opportunity to then have that property, use it for our purposes, or do with it as we wish in the future. I know a couple of meetings, quite a few meetings ago, I think towards the beginning of the school year, we all had a presentation here from the Magnus Nelson and his group, and they did a parliamentary procedures one, and I know there was a lot of feedback, positive feedback on the FFA programming and whatnot, and again, they used to use those facilities out there for some of the agricultural programming. I can't speak to what that might be in the future, but this gives us an opportunity that if we wanted to do that again, that would be able to continue doing that. What questions? And then, so what I have in front of you is the letter from Crow Wing County, their board action that they took to sell it, to offer it to us at that land value. That's the assessed value for the land on the county records. And then that last page is just an email snippet where it shows the other small associated fees that goes with an over-the-counter transaction.
What's the state assessment? What's
Pardon?
the $3,000 for the $8,000 for the state, 3%?
The assurance fee,
What is that?
I will have to get more details on what that all includes.
Tell those guys they can pay that. Is this the whole 80 acres?
That's the whole 80 acres, correct.
So did we research so we could buy just the part that we have the buildings on?
I can look at what that taxable market value is. It is,
Because we kind of talked like, we didn't know what we do with the rest, and there was talk about, I mean, the last time I heard about this, other than reading about it in the paper, was that maybe we needed it for a bus lot someday? Remember we were talking about that, and Heidi's friends, maybe we'd put some buses here, we'd have to have some space for them, but I thought we never, I didn't know, I don't know, we talked about this, like quite a while ago, and then all of a sudden, here it is. So what's the deal? Did you find out about the 40?
The land value, well, this is the last year's assessed land value, but if we just did the 40 with the buildings on it, it's 127,000. I'm guessing it's gonna be closer to probably 150. And then the other 40 with, pardon? It's about half, yeah. There's a little bit more land value because it's a little bit higher. There is some lower ground on the north section, on the north 40.
Do we have any idea what the appraised value is?
The appraised value of the 80 acres, it's gonna be quite a bit higher than the tax value. I mean, the tax value always lags, by a couple years, so.
Where are these funds gonna come from to pay for this?
So in conversations with Marcy and Heidi, we talked about it coming out of the general obligation funds that we have available from that last bond sale of Blueprint 181 money. The goal would be that, obviously we've been having conversations about, in the long range committee as well, the Buffalo Hills property, that the two properties would offset, in that the purchase of the farm and then the future sale potentially of the Buffalo Hills property would be a net zero transaction in the long run.
Or close.
Or very close to it. I mean.
Have you got any traction on the Buffalo Hills thing? I mean, I saw that in the paper too. Like, what's going on?
There's been conversations that I've had with the city, but nothing formal.
Well, the city council was laughing at us, saying that they would, we're gonna buy it, sell it to them for $1. And then Bevins was like, well, I'll give you $3. And then O'Day or whatever their name is was like, oh, I'll give you $7. Ha ha ha. Like, what is going on?
That is
Then I heard there's a program going that they're gonna pay us as the lots sell.
So
like, they're gonna be developers now. The city of Brainerd, just my partner I'm looking for to be a developer. I'm sure they're really good at it. And so then every time they sell a lot, they're gonna pay the school back for the lots. Like, what is going on?
That's never been part of our conversation. Yeah, that's never been part of our conversation.
Well, I think most of the curiosity that we have is from a newspaper article that none of us knew anything about, that lists a third-party developer too.
Yeah, that's two of them. So
Yeah.
the one is that we're buying the farm.
Yeah.
They approved us at the county commissioners approved us buying it. We're like, so guess what's happening to me?
I mean, to me,
My
the whole thing
phone's
seems
ringing, I'm getting
peculiar.
text messages,
So-
I'm getting emails, like, what are you doing? You're buying it? I don't know.
So statutorily, to buy, for one unit of government to buy tax forfeited land from another unit of government, and that's that statute, Minnesota Statute 282.01, that unit of government that is holding that property in tax forfeit status has to take board action to sell it to another unit of government without listing it for sale.
Makes perfect sense.
Right, so
Even when we were
that's-
looking about a non-transactional one where we gave them the land for the park over on the river,
Yep.
they came and they presented to us. I mean, I'm reading about it in the paper. That's what's confusing me about this whole situation. Like, nobody from the county has come in here and talked to us, and nobody from the city has come in here and talked to us. The mayor was
City
in here
did come
last.
talk to long range planning.
Oh, they did, okay.
They did, yep.
At one meeting.
We've started it, yep.
Yep.
Okay.
But I mean, nothing came of it. Like, there was nothing to it.
Yep, and there's another update. I've got it on the May 29th agenda to be back and have the city come back again and give us an update with what their plans are, because their community development director is the one who's been engaging the developer, has talked to me about the property and say, hey, what kind of interest would we have in something like this? So we've had some very high level, just wayfinding conversations really about what would we be interested in doing. That's on the property at Buffalo Hills. I don't know how it came up at a board meeting, a city council meeting, I should say. I wasn't privy to that meeting.
Oh, no, we're
so,
not grilling you.
yep.
We're just positing questions about, but I have one for you. What happens if we don't approve this tonight?
Then we don't have a lease currently with Crow Wing County, so that expired in December 31st. And so when I updated you guys back in October, November timeframe, the desire was that we were gonna look at getting an agreement in place with Crow Wing County to where we could have a conversation about buying it. If we don't want to go forward with it, then we would go back on the direction with Crow Wing County, and they would probably list it for sale, which then we would have to sell the land, the buildings. They would have to buy the buildings from us if they were to sell that on the public sale.
Is that in our lease?
What?
That those are our buildings?
Yes.
Oh.
I have title for all here's all the zoning permit applications that were on file with Crow Wing County that we built the building. So it's kind of, the way it's set up right now, if it was to be sold on the public market, it would get a little bit muddy with getting paid for the buildings and whatnot. And so that's where, with the need for the maintenance facility, that's where we brought it forward for consideration for us just to buy the land or take the land and use it for our operations.
What is the timeline for resolving the Buffalo Hills property purchase?
There's no timeline for that right now.
That could take years, yeah.
I'm trying to put like multifamily stuff up there, and that could take a long time. to go through all the-
And in that instance, the feedback that I gave them is that we're not in the business for housing development. So that's not really something I'm interested in having conversations about. I'd rather, if they want to have a conversation about, buying the land, getting it into a development agreement with some developer, that's fine, but that's not something I want to entertain, that we are the one that is funding that development. And that's been in some of the conversations I've had with the city.
So Reed, if we buy this property and, couldn't we turn around and recover money if we decide to sell it in parcels? And recover money significantly, better than the sale?
That is,
Possibly.
I would say that is a correct statement, yes.
Or lose money.
Yeah, well, I'll move that we, go ahead with the sale of the purchase of not the sale, the purchase of the school farm, with the county. And I'll ask for a roll call.
I'll just follow protocol here. So we will have a discussion yet.
Absent a second on Director Ward's motion, I would say that discussion should continue. Did you have something, Director Heidman?
What if we went back to the county and said, hey, we'll buy the 40. We don't want the other 40. They'd say, nah, it's all or nothing.
I don't know that would be the case, no. I haven't had that conversation with them.
And then what's the other 40 being used for right now?
Deer hunting.
No, there's no hunting on, when it's leased by school grounds.
Whatever, you know what I'm saying? It's hunting land. There's nothing on it.
At one time, there was some forestry work done out there with like a Pheasants Forever group and whatnot, but that's been 20+ years ago when the egg program was running.
Is that something that's sellable?
What's that, the 40 acres?
The other 40?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's tax forfeit. We don't own it, but it's.
If we bought
Let's say we do own it.
Let's say we bought the whole wet shebang. We wanted to sell off that other 40.
For sure.
How's it positioned from a road access perspective?
Right on Highway 25. There is an
other
easement, there
40
is an
is as
access, there is an access onto that northern 40
Yeah, I don't know the
anyways.
property at all. Okay.
Yeah, I know it fairly well.
I don't know if it's great. Maybe it's somewhat of an exaggeration.
Is it a wetland?
There's, I think there's about 2 acres of wetland. There's 2 acres of wetland, 78 acres of wooded.
On the whole thing.
Mhm.
So the wetland, that's kind of right there on TC Road,
It's
isn't it?
actually, it's on the very southwest corner of the South 40.
So the north really doesn't have any. Oh, I thought you said.
There's a high line, there's a utility high line that goes through there and a natural gas line that goes, easement that goes through there, a couple utility easements, but that's it.
Yeah, what bothers me a little bit too about the Buffalo Hills, I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was when Baxter, we wanted to keep a golf course, but they wanted to build a city. That didn't work out very well. And looking at what's happening with mortgage rates, et cetera, there appears to be not too much movement dropping on that. So to sell property off, Director Ward, I don't think I would be in favor of that, lotting it off and selling it. We'd be almost competing against private industry, and I don't think public interest should compete against private industry. If we sell it, we just sell it lock, stock, and barrel.
Not try to be developers.
And not be developers.
Yeah, the development business is kind of a tough business.
Because I know, talking to some of the council members, their vision was they wanted our land to be with their land, and then we'd sell it all together to a developer, and boom, we're done. The city's done, and we're done.
Sure.
So I don't know. I think for me, it's 2 separate issues. I don't know nothing about Buffalo Hills.
Yeah, we haven't had it. Like I
Yeah,
said, we've
it was in
had
the
some
paper, but
preliminary.
Director Boyle said it was in the paper, and I didn't know nothing.
Well, I mean, we've had a couple of really informal conversations
Yes.
about it, right? And what I would say from those conversations is, I'm not comfortable even talking about that property until we know a lot more about it.
100%
There's an
agree.
accessibility issue that was discussed because of the orientation of that land in relation to other property owners' access in the park. There's all kinds of, I mean, there could be hair all over that stuff, and we have no idea. And to me, it makes me extremely uncomfortable making a decision that sets us back close to $300,000 without knowing if we're ever gonna recoup that. But on the other hand, I don't wanna spin us into a tailspin where we all of a sudden create this murky situation where they're selling land out from under buildings that we built.
They wouldn't be able to. I mean, and that's part of the lease agreement, that when we make improvements, that if the lease was ever to be formally terminated, then those values have to be recuperated. So that's part of the lease agreement with the farm. So that's where, I mean, yeah, we can, if we were to go a different direction, and we were to terminate that lease, then we would have to be recuperated for those buildings, which puts us out of a spot for where we do all of our seasonal maintenance on all of our grounds equipment. It's a lot of equipment, guys. Yeah.
So, and
Good
go
spot.
ahead, Director
And so
Ward.
then to rebuild a maintenance facility like that is probably gonna cost us fourfold.
Yeah.
To that point.
Yeah.
If we terminate the lease or we don't follow through, we don't purchase it or whatever, they have the authority to say, okay, this is our land and you guys are out now with your equipment?
Yeah, we have to come to that's gonna be a negotiation, Director Ward, where we
Understand,
would,
But do they have could they say, you need to remove all your equipment, everything of yours that's there?
I would hope we wouldn't get to that point, yes, but, I mean, that's where if we're gonna go forward
they
with this
could.
thing, then if we go forward with the purchase agreement, then we own the land. If we don't go forward with it, we either have to renegotiate a lease or then terminate then that agreement.
And the county has stated, without equivocation that this now is the time, that this can't wait any longer, they've got to act on that.
That's what I have been told at two committee, the whole meetings, and then obviously their direction with the board approval for them to sell direct to us is that they're willing to do so right now. That's the direction I got from Commissioner Coring, was they want that off the tax rolls.
And he's kind of the one that
That's
started
his-
pushing this.
It's his region.
Oh, is that the deal?
So they let, kind of each commissioner.
We certainly can't build anything, and where else are we gonna take care of this stuff? The question is, to me, is do we buy 40 or do we buy 80?
I concur.
I mean, I went out and measured the building last summer, and I forget how big it was, but it's a pretty good sized building. And, but it's old. One thing I would like to recommend is that if we're gonna do it, let's get rid of all the garbage that's out there. You got all this old playground equipment, the
Well,
weeds are growing up this tall.
It's been an accumulation of moving bits and pieces for the last 4 years, and that's one of our
Oh, is that
summer
what it is?
activities is gonna be to go out there and get rid of stuff now that we've got everything done. Cause we were saving parts and pieces just in case. And that's been accumulation of that, and that's where it's at. So it'll get cleaned up, yes.
How about those old Suburbans and stuff?
And that's all transportation vehicles that we've been
4
using
years?
over the years. Yep.
So Director Teesey's done a good job of talking about this at long-range planning and just the potential or the options that exist. The difference between this piece of property or parcel property and the usability and access to the Buffalo Hills property is night and day. When you look at the roads and the access that already exist on this property, definitely a prime piece of property compared to, it's gonna take a developer to put in the expense to get the access of the Buffalo Hills, but we also know that that's an area of interest. When you look at that's a prime housing area, that's one of the reasons the district bought it way back, is because they felt that that was gonna be another location for a neighborhood school. Discussion we had entered, we actually had another bus contractor that came in when we were looking at RFPing, and that was a prime location. When you look at the direction that buses have to go north and east, one of the discussions was, well, if we would come into the area, we'd want to build a bus garage, we'd want to have so many buses. This is again when we were competing. Reichertz has done a great job, but districts our size typically might have several contractors to work with, so that's another. So if you look at property, that's a prime location for
What property?
the farm
Buffalo Hill?
property.
The farm property, okay, I thought you were referencing the Buffalo
Yeah,
Hills.
and so again, when you look at value, they're night and day. And so I think that's been some of the discussion is to explore then, do you do 40, do you do 80? That additional 40 is way more marketable and usable potentially for the district or for the sell-off later than what currently exists in Buffalo. When the analysis was done on both pieces, they're about a wash in expense. So I think that the research and the discussions that's happened, Director TC was challenged with going back to the county to say, okay, what's our next step? That's the next step that's come before you. So the paper, I think was recording accurately. Some people interpreted it as, oh, the district's buying it. No.
Well,
They did the first step to say, here's what we need to do in order for it to be eligible for the district to purchase.
Well, the accessibility issues with Buffalo Hills are part of the reason that 20 acres in the middle of this city is only worth $280,000. So that's reflective. If there's any developer out there that's
I don't
worth
think the
anything.
Buffalo Hills stuff is worth 280. What did we find out, Reed? We've 200 to 250?
I have,
It's only 20 acres though. I mean,
yep.
That's 20.
I've got some.
No roads into it. You can't get there from here type of a deal.
Yep. So I've reached out, we had an estimate from, our, one of our realtor, folks that we work with here on the house sale. He gave us just a real rough market estimate here a couple years ago. And then, Director Donlinger, I did talk with, folks at Close Converse a little bit, give us an estimate on what that would be. And, there's 2 parcels that have sold on the south side of Brainerd. One of them is right, they're both right in that area of Buffalo Hills, and they've sold between 11 and 12.5, I believe, is what per acre. So when you look at, if you take $12,000 times 20 acres, 240-ish, 250. We could probably look at starting out if we were to put it out on the market, 300,000 somewhere in there, and then see what kind of offers you get for it. But you're correct. There's no infrastructure on that park. They built the ball fields and the playgrounds on the south side on Buffalo Hills for a reason, because there's no infrastructure that goes back into that wooded area. And then I don't know the roads as you tie in back there, but there's no real easy way to put a road through that property. So
the north side, it comes really close to it.
And
I think they probably have something.
And that's why there was the
You gotta run the sewer and the water and the sidewalks, and whoever goes in there to develop it's gonna have.
So when you looked at that story in the paper, why they talked about doing like a land swap where that northwest corner or the west half of our property could become part of the park, and then the park board would give up the eastern half of their section to allow better access back on that property. That's what was in the conversation that was in the paper article here last week. And so I think that came out of the community development committee, planning committee at the city. They're just having those conversations about what if. It's just what if conversations.
Somebody's sniffing around over there. It sounds like, and reading the paper.
So the city's been driving for continuing to develop vacant parcels in the city of Brainerd, right? That's been a constant drive that the city of Brainerd has been doing. And it's just, how do we develop these unused parcels within the city limits? It's building tax value, as any taxable organization would try and do. That's why Crow Wing County has said, hey, let's look at this tax forfeit property. Not that they're gonna get taxes from us, because we're tax exempt as a school district, but if it was sold out in the public market, then that would be a taxable property.
Yeah.
And that's their drive.
Couple questions about the farm property.
Mm-hmm.
Have we entertained or talked to anybody about what the other 40 would be worth? As far as from
I haven't, no. It's basically been, the lease is for the 80, and that's where we started. If we want to go a different direction, surely could.
what would the county say if we went back to them and says we just want to buy 40? You think they're gonna come back and say, no, 80?
I don't think that, I think if they got one parcel off of their books, they'd call it a win, probably, I would assume.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to have Director TC discuss with the county whether they would consider selling us just 40 instead of 80, and just see what they come back with. I don't even know if it needs a motion.
Well, I was gonna say,
Maybe it doesn't even need a motion.
You can entertain a motion until you take my hammer away from me, but you can make one.
Well, okay.
Well, do we even need a motion if we're not gonna approve this? Or can we just have discussion and And.
We can do whatever we want. We can do,
And
I
you can
mean,
just get back to us
the
next
reality
meeting
is
and
if
then we
we
either
do
buy the
nothing and it's
80 or the
tabled,
40 or nothing.
he's given no specific direction, but if we want to explore that and have that, so the question is, do you
I'd
want
like to
that?
hear what they say.
So do you want that to run back through the committee?
Oh, I don't think it needs to go through the committee. I think
Well-
we're all up to speed on it now. What else is there? Just whether they'd sell 40 and then decide if we wanna buy 40 or 80. I would think. What do you think, Sarah?
Well, the other thing that I think is that Director Ward originally, when he made the motion that didn't get a second, was requesting a roll call vote. So I think board action on it would make me more comfortable if we had a motion and to give Director TC some specific direction as opposed to whatever. I mean, that's my take on it, but I don't make motions. I just write on papers, so.
I don't know the rules.
We do have a committee on May 29th. I can surely, whatever direction the board wants to take tonight, I can happily go back to the county and engage them for conversations and see what they would say and give an update at the May 29th long-range committee meeting, and then there would be a subsequent June board meeting that I could come back
Okay.
with whatever
I mean,
direction.
the only thing we know factually at this moment in time is that the motion to approve as presented, the purchase of the 80
Yep.
acres, did not receive a second, therefore fails.
Yep.
So in the absence of that, I guess then we don't need a formal motion. We can just say, do we want Director TC to go back to the county and frame it as Director Heidman indicated on the, what does the scenario look like with us just taking the 40 acres and not the other 40 acres?
I mean, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over your deal either, but I think we should just look at it. Why not find out? See what
I
our
agree.
options are.
My own take on it is, I don't know why I would spend $120-some thousand of district money on trees when we're struggling to pay for some other stuff.
Yeah.
Unless we knew we could sell it right away, and then we don't wanna be in the business of being a developer. I mean, I realize there are different funds and there's different ways to move that around because this is residual money in a different area, but the optics still suck from my perspective.
Well, here's the other deal is, and I've been out there and so has Reed, obviously a lot more than I have, but, I used to go out there and pick up my hunting dogs when Hagelin ran it. The good old days when Mark was out there teaching us kids. Anyways, I think we're probably using 8 acres, 5 acres. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got 40. There's a little bit of wetland in there. But I mean, if we wanted to open it up because we needed another 15, 20 acres, I mean, you could put a lot of stuff in that
Oh, you
area.
can get a bus garage on 20 acres.
Well, I'm building a brand new car dealership on 5.5. The old one that we had in Brainerd on 210 was 2.5 acres. So, I mean, there's a lot of space out there that we can open that baby up and maybe make everybody happy. Why don't we just look into that and just see what the deal is? It's not a panic, is it? The county's not like putting any pressure on you time-wise, so another month isn't gonna kill anything. Let's just check it out.
No, I mean-
I feel more comfortable. You okay with that, John? I think we just look, see what options are.
Okay. All right, very good.
Perfect.
I'll give you an update on the 29th.
You're the man.
Okay.
What time's the meeting? Well, I know, I got
Noon.
it. I got it. I'll meet you there.
Shower.
Noon, something like that. Yes. It's on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed.
All right, next up is Director Murtha with the approval of the Brainerd Public Schools handbooks for next school
Can I go
year.
to the bathroom? I don't think we have to adjourn. I think you
Yes.
just wait to start. Give me 2 seconds.
Take a recess while Director Murtha Martha.
Or no, they don't need it.
All right. Approval of the Brainerd Public Schools handbooks for the 2024-2025 school year as presented.
It is a certain sign of spring every year when we bring the revised handbooks for the next year forward. We're bringing them forward to you a month earlier than normal because the school board has asked that they be given time to explore them, at least in the last year or two. And if we bring them in June and then make final approval in July, we're really we got no wiggle room for finishing the galleys and getting them to print. So we brought them to you a month early. Also, you are eligible to pass these off on one vote if you approve, depending on the questions that you have, which might take a little pressure off of what's looking to be a very significant June school board meeting. So what's in front of you are each of the 11 student handbooks. The primary changes or additions that were made to language around bus discipline, video surveillance, service animals, and building access, and the role of the protocols for visitors in district buildings. So safety component pieces were the primary things that were the major changes. There's always some small language updates, and each school sometimes has some minor alterations to things that they do that are unique to them. That's the general overview. What questions may you have?
Well, the general idea, right, and you kind of just addressed this a second ago, obviously specifically if we talk about the 6 elementary schools, each building is going to have some specific language per the site, but for the most part, there was great effort put into standardizing and creating uniformity across all 6 of those handbooks to the extent possible, yes.
The vast majority of the handbook is based on existing board policy. You'll find those policies referenced parenthetically at the end of each section. So it's essential that there's a common message around district policy. But we do have to recognize that sometimes the directions in entering a building, maybe go left, go right, go straight, depending on what building you're in, so that might be different.
I'd make a motion to accept them all, if you're ready for that.
Oh, I'm definitely ready to be done with handbooks.
Last year, I read every one of them. I'm like, these are kind of all the same, aren't they? And you're like, yeah, they're just about identical.
I deeply appreciate the thoroughness with which you approach that task.
It was the first year for us, so
yeah,
I read them all too.
I understand, and that's appropriate. Now that you've read them all, you understand that you can grab one elementary, one middle, and probably one of the secondaries, and you'll have a good gist of what's going on.
Did somebody make a motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion from Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Ward to approve all of the Brainerd Public Schools handbooks for the 2025 school year as presented. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, this is final approval?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
And I just want to verify, according to our committee meeting, you've moved over the dress code appearance and some of that stuff. Staff ratio and student acceleration policy. No, heck, I'm reading wrong now here. Dress code and appearance and school dress, that is all going to be inside of the handbooks now. That's why we're retiring those policies.
Those policies, as Director Bennett, I believe, referenced, were policies above and beyond language that exists in other policies, perhaps a bit reactionary. Those are the kind of policies that get written because something happened once in history and there was a need to respond to it. And that was, it's something that's faded enough in the past that the language that we believe exists currently is sufficient. So it really hasn't impacted much of a change in policy of the handbooks other than standardizing language. And that language will be, again, based on the existing policy. So the retirement does not impact that language. That's a long way of saying that last sentence.
Chair Boyles? Clarification, Director Heidman, those 2 policies were specific to staff. So when you look at, I go back to policy.
Those were the,
Yep.
Yeah.
630 and
650.
Those were staff, so those are now into the staff handbooks, those 2 policies.
I saw that.
In the student policy section, there's still a policy specific to dress, and that is addressed in the handbook.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But you asked that question at policy committee, so the student policy is separate?
Yeah. Nope, makes sense.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, next up will be the approval of the final reading of MSBA Policy 606, our old friend, textbooks and instructional materials.
What's in front of you is at the core, the MSBA recommended policy for textbook and instructional materials. Because the existing board-approved policy 606 for Brainerd is so radically different than the MSBA policy, because it contains significant amounts of procedure, and it has some elements that just aren't found anywhere else in anyone's policy. What we opted to do was start with the MSBA policy and bring in as red line pieces from the old policy that we thought were still relevant based on our conversations around policy 631. And this is intended to be parallel to policy 631. So we pulled out all that procedural work, put those in the appendices, and we separated them into three portions. The first portion being the process by which resources would be selected. So this is the curriculum improvement process of the district. The second appendix is the appendix on how to share a concern or ask for a review of that policy, of that resource. And number three, C, we chose to preserve the guidance around the use of audiovisual and video materials. Okay, multimedia materials. That was something very unique to Brainerd. I could not find it in anyone else's example of policy, but I do think it was worth keeping. So we've tried to honor some of the intent of the old policy, simplify it by adopting the MSBA policy and giving the superintendent the discretion to implement appendices A, B, and C, but requiring them to be attached to this policy for transparency. So that's the work that we've done.
So it makes it a little bulkier, but a little bit
How's it work?
easier to understand.
So it's, the only thing there is to approve is policy 606, and then these are just the appendixes?
Well, we're approving we're approving that
attachments?
those are attachments to that, as opposed to, because that language has been pulled out of the functional policy.
Correct. What you're approving is policy 606, which is just the 3 pages that are in 606. You are, in doing so, empowering the superintendent or their designee to create and attach to this policy the procedures by which resources be selected, resources could be reviewed, and how to handle and make decisions around multimedia text.
So same thing we did with 631.
I don't think so. I think that was part of the 631, wasn't it?
No.
It was part of, 631 had forms attached to it that we had separated out. We kind of learned by doing. We were kind of getting a little bit better at this each time we do it. We thought this was cleaner in that you have policy, you have procedure, and so if you know which portion of the procedure you're in, you know which appendix to go to.
And there's still board purview over these if we choose to exercise it. It's
Correct.
just to keep it to where we don't have to have, if they make a minor change to how you review a curriculum resource or something, it doesn't have to become a full-blown board action for us to go look at that one piece.
Every 3 years, this is a piece of policy that will come back before you. What you can do now is just to approve 606 and leave the appendices alone if you don't feel there's substantive change to the policy that would impact the procedure. It could lighten the workload in the future.
Explain that to me again, I don't quite get that.
Everything.
You can approve 606 without the appendices?
You can, yes. But what you're doing when you're approving 606 is part of the text is empowering the superintendent to declare what the procedures will be. So that management piece falls to the superintendent. What we've done here is ensure that you're seeing what that would look like. So once it's attached to this policy, this is what we do, this is what we'd publish, this is what we'd share with the community. We felt that organizing it this way made it cleaner and simpler, particularly for people who don't live in our bubble. They want to know how curriculum is chosen. That process is delineated in Appendix A. They may wish to challenge curriculum. That's delineated in Appendix B. Teachers or principals may have questions about what can I use in my classroom to supplement my core instruction with digital or multimedia resources. So guidance is provided in C. So it's intended just to make it, you know where to go for what you need. It keeps the original policy short and clean. It states the purpose of the policy. And then at that point, all you have to do is on a triannual basis, compare it to the new revised MSBA policy. And if there are not major changes to that policy, then all you have to do is the red line on 606. You don't need to necessarily change appendices A, B, and C. You would only want to change them if some significant piece of text within 606 changed.
And this now aligns library resource material compared to textbook and instructional material. They're now separated out.
If you look at sections, I think 3, 4, and 5 of the 631, you would see almost parallel language with the only substitution, instructional resource, and the processes we did. We intentionally designed it to be parallel to that, so those processes would look the same to anyone who, again, doesn't live in our bubble and it gets into the nuances of policy and structures.
I make a motion, we approve the final reading of MSBA Policy 606, textbooks and instructional materials, including the appendices A, B, and C.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Spear to approve the final reading of Policy 606, including 606A, B, and C appendices. Any further discussion?
Director Boyles? This was a policy we did review in depth at our policy committee meeting as well.
That is correct.
For me, I'd be all over it if it just didn't have, I just don't like the B thing. But, so I probably have to vote no on it just because I don't like the B. Other than that, it's great. It's simple. The 606 is really clean. I think you did a great job. I just am, once again, it's like a broken record. I don't understand why we're putting children on the committee to make a decision about a book that's part of the curriculum. The library made more sense to me than the curriculum, but if the parent's got a problem, I don't understand it. So I'd have to be a no, but I don't think it'll probably pass without me, so I don't know if it's gonna make any difference, but my own brain, I have to stick to my morals. I have to be dependable, Kevin. Predictable.
Consistent.
Any further discussion from anybody else? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
So by my count, motion carries 5-1.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Murtha. Next up, we are now to the added new business discussion item, retreat discussion per Director Ward's motion from earlier in the meeting. Director Ward, why don't we let you kick it off?
Thank you, Chair Boyles. The whole process of the superintendent search was a great learning lesson for me. I hope for all of us moving forward. I also believe that we as a board are now tasked with many different and new decisions, discussions, dialogues, agreements, disagreements. And I think that it would be worthwhile to have a school board retreat to discuss a number of things that have been brought up in the past. For example, cell phone. I mean, just off the top of my head. But I also think that we need to talk about the next superintendent search. And that what did we learn from that? Because I learned a lot. And I've talked to a significant number of people since then and been schooled on a lot of different things. And I think it's very valuable. The input that I have received is very valuable and appreciated. And I just think that we need to get together, and we as a board need to get together in a public setting again, but as a school board retreat to discuss a number of issues.
Okay, thank you. I mean, what I would say is, I think we all liked the retreat. We were getting our handle on the format. We were getting our handle on how to conduct those. Unfortunately, budget issues came up, the superintendent search came up, and got us derailed.
Yep.
So I would be stunned if anybody at this table is anti-scheduling a retreat as soon as we can administratively schedule one.
What would we try to do it before next month's meeting?
So, Mr. Chair.
Director Ward.
The next month's meeting is June 10th. And, you know, that's a great question. From my opinion, I think, yes, we should. Excuse me, do it before the next board meeting is my opinion. I'll just weigh in with that.
I got a bunch of stuff going.
Like schedule-wise?
Yep.
I'm the same way. I'm
I gotta be in
almost out of
Texas, I
town
gotta be in
between now
Missouri,
and
I
the
gotta
next
be
school
in
board
Canada,
meeting.
I gotta be in South Dakota.
I mean, we could try to do it right on the heels of that meeting. I mean, if, you know, as we look at agenda topics for that, I think going back through the portion of the graduate stuff to see maybe the final look at that would be kind of good. But I actually agree with Director Ward. I think, you know, sort of comparing and contrasting the last two superintendent searches to look for, what everybody's gonna want, we can look for a best practice out of that, or what collectively the group wants to do. I think there's a lot of power in that, but I mean, the reality is that search isn't going to occur until December at the earliest, so I mean, I'm trying to understand, I mean, like, if we couldn't do the retreat until mid-June, is that really gonna cause issues, I guess?
Well,
Yeah, Director Rod?
That's fine. I just think that, there are issues, there are, topics, there are decisions that need to be made in this district, in my opinion, soon. Whether it's finances, whether it's personnel, whether it's curriculum, whatever. I just think that, Superintendent Hahn is, gonna be leaving July 1st. And I think it's important that we as a board discuss a number of very important issues that need to be dialogued about.
No, phrased that way, I agree with you. What you originally said was the superintendent search process, not really the what kind of collective issues do we want to line up on to get prioritized for the interim superintendent. Those are two different things, right?
They are, and for sure they are.
And one's time sensitive and the other one's less time sensitive from my perspective.
Why don't we just meet Saturday morning?
This Saturday morning?
Yeah, or Friday afternoon. I mean, I know I'm the problem, but like the next week I'm gone. I gotta go to Dallas on Sunday. I gotta be in Missouri on Wednesday. So I'm just like gone the whole time. And then the first week of June I'm gone too. So, and then are we gonna try to have a referee?
Well, it's an open meeting. It's a
Right, but I mean, we've been using Paula to facilitate our previous retreats, I think is maybe what you're referring to.
Yeah, and I think we should go off-site. We need a different view. So we should go off-site.
I agree. I would say anything, like I said, between now and the next board meeting, because of everything else that's been going on, I've
That's
let
me
too
too.
much go and I'm too stacked up. I'm not available this
I
weekend.
agree.
Well, I'm fine with that. Let's look at some dates then.
Okay.
Let's look at some dates. I just think it should be sooner than later. I don't think.
I actually agree.
August or September. I don't care if the new search is not done until December. There are still items that we as a board have to be responsible for, in my opinion. Have to dialogue about, have to discuss. And to put it off further down the road, I don't think is is good, period. So let's look at some dates.
I could do it June 1st.
Director Boyle?
Dr. Hahn?
A couple suggestions just specific to superintendent search. I think you have a couple experts you can access. One, obviously Barb Dorn, who's been leading with MSBA. The other thing with the partnership we've established and you've established with the trust of Paula Lockman, they are both going to offer things. I think there's discussions that they can help you lead or help lead you through, specifically about transitioning and how do you approach interim. And those steps, I think they have expertise in both those areas as well as ongoing. So just know, I think they have experience with boards. Both of them do in this unique situation that I think can bring some insight or establish some guidance or supports.
I think June 1st would be, I mean, is everybody looking at June 1st?
It doesn't work for me.
Okay.
It's a weekend, which I know I don't like, but I don't know if.
I'm at a point now where weekends are about all that work for me.
Well, if we just keep
June 8th,
going and be done.
I could do June 8th.
I think as long as we get it squeezed in before the next board meeting,
I could do June
right?
8th.
Because at that point, that's gonna be where we're gonna act on the interim superintendent, so having some ducks lined up before that.
I think that'd be worthwhile
Yeah.
and valuable.
How is June 8th for everybody?
That worked very good at Bowstring Resort.
I can do it.
It's off-site, and it's a very nice picturesque view of the lake.
Is that where you'll be?
Yeah. I will not be at the next board meeting.
Oh,
I'm just being facetious. But would be a nice, but it's a long
So
way to
June 8th
travel.
works for you or doesn't work for you? You totally just lost
Oh, the
me.
weekends, June 8th would not work for me, no, because I'll be gone already.
What about June 7th?
We're leaving on Friday.
Okay.
June
Okay.
1st worked for me.
How about the 31st?
31st I could make work.
we have
Oh.
graduation that day.
Oh, that's right.
High school graduation?
Yep, which you all need to be at.
Let's just wait till after the meeting on the 10th,
Make sure
Okay.
that that's on your schedules.
and then I'm good to go.
I mean, same here. Weekdays could work for me at that point, just
Right.
between now and the next board meeting, I am already booked out on
I think
everything.
Friday night is ridiculous. And I think that's kind of,
Friday night.
well, that one we did on Friday afternoon, we got out of there at 6 o'clock at night. Like, what the heck, it's Friday afternoon, why do we have to do that? So Paula's gotta come up here and then drive home on, it's like, it's a lot to ask. And I don't know if we need a referee at this time.
Missing some
And
insider
Heidi, you-
expertise.
If we would have a referee, I would, at this point, if we're gonna be talking a little bit about some of the superintendent stuff, I mean, Barb's more connected than Paula is, so.
Well,
We may be able to
I
do
don't
it
know
on the
what we're
phone.
gonna talk about, that's
and
all
for
I'm
what it's
saying.
worth, we should have a named interim superintendent by the time that retreat occurs. I don't know that really matters one way or the other, but that would be decided upon by the board, assuming everything goes well.
On the
June
10th?
10th, yeah.
On the 10th?
Yeah.
And so what's that process?
Process is right now, I have a meeting with Barb Dorn, day after tomorrow, Wednesday, to review, she's placed calls to over a dozen potential interim possibilities. We've had some proactive reach outs from people so far. Nothing that's on the radar yet. We haven't discussed anything. And then what I will probably do is we'll probably look at, from that field, if we get more than two, then we'll look at those and then I will reach out to you individually and discuss what we're looking at and kind of go from there.
Will you get, so when you get the information from Barb, what will you get from Barb?
She and I
Oral
will review
information,
their
written
stuff.
information?
We're doing a Zoom call on Wednesday where she'll pull up relevant information about that person for her eyes and my eyes only at that point. And from there, then we'll collectively come up with a recommendation and bring it to the rest of you. And then based on that, unless somebody sees something, and then invite you to do your own due diligence if that's what anybody does want to do on that. And then if concerns are raised by an individual board member, those would come to me and I would go back to Barb and then we would figure out what to do from there.
Okay.
It's a little more complicated because we're between meetings, so we've got to be mindful of open meeting law, and then I'm trying to keep everybody included at the same time as having been empowered by this body to go ahead and essentially make the decision on who to bring forward. But I won't obviously do that without talking to people.
No, you've been very good about including all of us in discussion, and I appreciate that. So what was the?
So anything
after the board-
after the 10th works for me. I can move almost anything I have, weekday, weeknight, weekend, whatever. So the
So
rest
I've
of you
heard
are.
Friday and Saturday work for you, DJ.
Yeah, I could do the Friday afternoon. I think it's a lot to ask for, but I'd rather just do Saturday morning and just put a hard times on it.
This is
Starts
saying
at 8,
15?
ends at
On the
12.
15th, you talking?
Sure.
Randy's back from wherever?
I am back in town.
You probably get the chamber.
Now Sarah's out.
Sorry.
Sarah's out.
So what about earlier in that week, like
What about
Thursday
the
or Friday?
14th?
The 14th, fine.
I'm in Washington, the 11th through the
Okay.
18th.
Oops, so that whole week's dead.
That'll be fun. DC? Washington State.
Seattle State.
That'll be a little cooler.
Yeah, I will not be in attendance.
All right, so can we back up to the week of the 3rd again? We know the 8th doesn't work. Randy, you leave on the 7th?
Correct.
So
Now,
3, 4, 5,
now-
6?
I would,
I'm leaving on the 5th. And,
gonna be around on the 8th?
no, and I'm
Okay,
coming
then
back
I'm-
the morning of the meeting.
So we're down to the 3rd and the 4th if we're gonna try to do it before the meeting. If we're trying to do it after the meeting because of Sarah's schedule, we're looking at the 19th or after.
And on the 4th, there's a blueprint, which I could skip. 181 blueprint meeting,
Well, the 4th,
8
there's
o'clock, and there's a finance
there's a
meeting
finance
for
committee
you and I
meeting
at
on-
12 o'clock.
at noon.
Yeah, which we probably better be at with the budget coming on and everything, huh?
Yep.
But that would be important it'd be nice, because then you can have a full board discussion.
Oh,
Oh, everybody goes to
Or you
finance
could break
meeting?
and then, yeah, I mean, it's a public meeting, so only the two board members could actively participate, but it's a public meeting, so.
So if we did a retreat from 9 to 12 and then had the finance meeting, does that sound it?
All right, the only issue I have with that is when is this group done at 9 to 12 and stuck with it?
Say the same thing.
Well, the first one we did, we stuck to our schedule pretty good, but then it went over like an hour at the end. It was pretty much over. I remember I left, people were, you left, like you were gone, and then we just kinda all when I left, you were still going.
All right,
and
so
you were
what
still
we'll
there.
have to do is we'll have to sit,
You were
Sarah and I
still
will have to sit down and prioritize what the topics are and talking to each one of you, with superintendent stuff, if you will, being the top priority, and that may be all we'll get done.
Are we gonna try to bring Paula?
I would try to, yes.
Do we pay her then, or how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, they have like a
She's-
contracted
Yeah, we
rate.
have a consulting fee. She's
I think
been-
it'd be smart to bring her, she keeps us on task.
I agree.
And then, why don't you see what dates work for her? Just remember that
Okay.
Sarah's
So what's-
gone 11th to 18th, I'm gone 5th through 10th. So that whole 5th through the 18th is toast.
Well, and
Yep, I'm going too, so.
maybe excuse me, maybe just the topic is, let's discuss the superintendent search.
That's fine.
And then nothing else. I mean, we have other things, in my opinion, have other things that we absolutely need to talk about at maybe another board retreat.
Well, I don't understand why we're gonna waste a whole board retreat on something we're not gonna work on until December.
Well, because we're gonna talk about priorities for the incoming interim.
Oh, well, we can just talk one-on-one on that, right? Isn't that the deal? You're gonna call us and tell us what you think?
No, I'm talking about, like,
Can
we
research
have to
them
kind of
and-
write our own 90-day plan for that person that's coming in. Like, what do we want?
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Hahn, where are we at on a cell phone policy? I know at one point in time, we kind of just talked a little bit about it, and everyone seems to be in favor. I mean, the whole state is in favor of doing something.
There's some legislation that's moving through right now that I think a lot of districts have paused on to see how that plays out. There's districts who have enacted policy and, like I know Hennepin was one this year. And then you look at there's policy and then how do you enforce policy? So knowing that legislation was moving through, I think it's just been time to.
All right, so here's
pause.
what I think we
So,
should do. I
gotta
think
come
we
to
should
policy.
contact Paula. I think we should look at that week when Sarah's back, so the 19th through the 22nd.
Of June?
June. We will have named an interim superintendent on June 10th. They will not be coming on until July 1st.
We hope we might, if they can agree, we have a leadership retreat, we would bring them to
Yep.
starting June 15th.
To work on some transition. At that point, June 10th, we'll also have, Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise, we'll approve the budget for the next school year on June 10th anyway, which has already preliminarily been discussed. We already kind of know what that fund balance dip looks like. There's nothing about the superintendent transition that's gonna impact that anyway. So.
June 19th, I think, is off the board, isn't it?
No, Sarah's back on the 18th.
But it's Juneteenth. It's a
Oh,
holiday.
it's a holiday, yep, so you're down to 2021, 22.
20th, I'm out of, I come back from out of town on the 20th.
Okay, so how's 21st? Let's look at that.
Friday?
Yes,
I can make it work, I've got a board
Yep,
meeting.
I'm
that
fine,
morning,
I'm
but
fine, I'm fine.
21st?
21st, 22nd, I'm fine.
Afternoon?
Well, yeah,
that's
we
not
need to
policy.
for DJ, because he's got a board, probably a bank board meeting.
It's my class reunion.
That night?
I have a bank meeting on Friday morning, and then it's my class reunion on Saturday. We're supposed to be playing golf.
So Friday is preferable to Saturday then, but we need to do it after, let's say 11?
Yeah.
Like 11 to
Perfect.
2 or
I
whatever
think that's
Paula's
what we did
schedule
the
is.
last one, actually, yeah, 11 o'clock would be great.
Perfect. All right, so let's tentatively look for that. So 6:21, 11 o'clock,
Board retreat.
board retreat.
What time?
I'm open the whole next week.
11 o'clock.
Okay, I have an appointment at 11. but I-
You gonna be up at that time?
Yeah, no, I'll work around that appointment, so.
All right, so you're just gonna
Okay,
communicate with us?
Dr. Hahn and I will work with Paula and make sure she's available, and then.
Texting her right now.
Okay. And then if something changes, then we'll just push it. We don't want to push it too much further. But at that point, maybe we get lucky that late in the month where again, our interim soup would come join us for the retreat and we'd have the benefit of both transitional parties in the same room, perhaps. Something we can talk about, but I think it's a good idea.
Then we'd have some people,
Excellent.
some people at the retreat then.
Site to be determined?
Yeah,
obviously.
site to be determined.
Time is 11
I
though.
thought if the chamber was willing, that room worked really well for us.
Why didn't you want it on site?
What's that?
Why didn't you want it on site?
I think it's a better deal to get it off-site. I think it's a little change of pace for us. I mean, how many days have we spent in this room in the last month? I don't work here. So let's get out and go do something else. And if we have to spend a couple bucks, it'd be nice to go to the airport. It'd be nice to do this. It'd be nice to go, you know, local
I
places.
just was curious what you were thinking that. Change of scenery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this is all dependent upon Paula's schedule, right?
In theory, yeah. Yep. Okay. So why can we get that in the form of a motion? We don't have to have the dates, I mean.
So move.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Donlinger to schedule, tentatively schedule a board retreat for June 21st at 11 o'clock a.m. to be facilitated by Paula O'Loughlin from Partner Ed, and location TBD. Dr. Hahn and I will work with that. It's a long motion, but yes. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll work out the details and I'll keep you all in the loop. All right, that concludes business. We can move on to Director Ward with an update on the Personnel and Benefits Committee meeting.
Okay, so, we met on, April 17th, and, we discussed Frontline Central update. Frontline Central is a product that houses electronic employee files. Did Angie that, you presented that, Angie, or Marcy? I can't remember.
Angie did.
Angie, yeah, and, I mean, it's a huge, advancement towards keeping track of where people are and shuffling paper and saving paper and actually saving some money. The other thing that we talked about was the employee management that was launched last spring. It shows where the staff are and what they're teaching. So all of that electronic stuff is a huge movement forward with our district. Staffing was underway at that point. The literacy coordinator's transition has been moving smoothly. There were 3 finalists for the Lowell principal at that point. It's now been determined. Director of Teaching and Learning has now been determined. District assessment and testing also has been determined, hasn't it, right, with Carrie, I think, right?
I believe, Carrie, did our candidate accept? Yes.
Okay.
We have a dat.
Policy review, Angie brought forth a number of the policy reviews, and some of them we just talked about, 431, 725, the dress code. We're going on in the staff handbook, you just heard about that. Then we also talked about all the other policies that were brought up. Union contracts and handbooks expire on 6/30. Mr. Murtha, Director Murtha obviously brought us up to date on the handbooks. Meeting for union groups, the principal groups have they met yet? Okay, so they're gonna meet in June is what it says, right?
They have not stepped forward yet to,
Pardon me?
they have not stepped forward for negotiations yet.
Okay. Discussion was held regarding negotiations involving the school board members. I suggested that we look at a possibility of school board members, and I know that's putting extra work on us, but we are all putting extra work on our staff, and a lot of extra work on our staff when we are asking them to lead the negotiations. As I've researched and looked into it, there are many, I would say more than 50%, 60% of the districts in the state that have at least one school board member on the forwarding committee, on the key committee. So if you're working with certified, there's a school board member and perhaps a staff. If you're working on custodians, there's a school board member and a staff. I think we really need to look at that.
Isn't that what we did?
Pardon me?
We came in a little later in the game on them.
I'm talking about right from the get-go. I'm talking about from the get-go. In my opinion, I believe that will help negotiations, and I believe it will, let me just say that, I think it will help negotiations. That's one thing, one of the things that I wanted to bring up in the future, but it was talked about at the personnel committee, and I said that I would bring it forward to the board members to consider it. I'm planting a seed, and I'm gonna keep watering it. So,
I'm fine with it.
So, I just think it would help, and having said that, we've got the clerical secretarial meeting scheduled on, no, they've already met.
Yeah, but now we had clerical and interpreter, and now we're not gonna meet till June, so
Oh,
their,
yeah,
their
that's
field
right.
rep had a family emergency that's delayed some of our meetings.
And confidential, we took care of, and the principals are, we don't know yet, but, so there are a number of units, bargaining units that are, coming forward with negotiations this year. So I plant that seed for us to consider and think about. That was, any questions? That was it?
It was a big meeting.
Yeah.
Director Heidman, you want to recap the policy committee?
Yeah, that was held on the 24th of April, Wednesday. We're quite busy at the Gitche Zeebe, and we talked about there were 11 events that were going to be open to the public alone just in April. Dr. Hahn showed us some new signage for the Gitche Zeebe, and it looked pretty cool. And I'm sure there'll be. I don't think we need there's not going to no discussion at a board meeting. Are you going to show?
I think we don't have a final plan, but
Okay.
it'll be coming forward.
Okay. Kindergarten roundup numbers. I think Dr. Hahn, you mentioned enrollment 385.
385 is where we're at with.
Where we're at?
Yep, okay.
Okay. We've already talked about policies. Yes, 431 and 725. Director Bennett informed us of that stuff tonight. It's already been discussed and approved. Let's see, Anne Marie talked to us about policy 560, naming of buildings and facilities, to include the ability to name spaces or have sponsorships. And I think something's going to be brought forward. I don't know at what meeting, if it's going to be the June meeting or the July meeting, but there's some interesting stuff. And some of let's put it this way. There's people that are willing to do sponsorships. It's just a matter of how it's going to be put in the policy, et cetera. Director Murtha talked about policy 606, textbooks and instructional materials. We discussed that, but it's already been discussed here. This one I'm a little shy on remembering. We talked about the smudging procedure, and Director Ross has put together an attachment. I'm assuming this is going to have to be brought before the board, and if the language has been finalized or not, but it's something that we'll be discussing at a future board meeting, right?
The procedure was aligned with policy. The procedure went back to APAC. APAC is hoping to have a little bit more discussion. Basically, we're following everything in policy. I think it's just getting the details of procedure. So there's more to come on that. I'll probably come back to policy.
Okay, before it comes before the board, okay. And we're also going to review facility use fees at our various buildings, including Gitche Zeebe. There's been no increase in fees. There's a concern that we're not covering custodial staff pay and potentially any damages that may be occurring to facilities or equipment. So more to come on this. I am assuming that we brought forth either to policy or back to the board.
Correct.
School handbooks already are ready to be printed. Portrait of graduate, we talked a little bit about that. That's already been taken care of. And our next meeting is July 17th, scheduled at 12 p.m. End of report.
Thank you, Director Heidman. Next up, we'll do informational with the BPSF report from Director Spear.
3 quick things to share. The group met last Monday and are continuing their efforts to collect worn warrior gear to bring in through the end of this week. So they'll get that laundered and back out on the streets for purchase by the beginning of the school year next year. Scholarship night is May 22nd over at Forest View. There were 195 applicants for those scholarships, and over 150 scholarships will be awarded on May 22nd. So just a really awesome celebration of students and giving them an opportunity to go on with their education and whatever's next. And then June 13th will be the retired teacher luncheon that BPSF helps coordinate. That's it.
That's great, thanks. How about, Michelle, I know you have a equity task force update. Now, neither you or I or John were
Well,
at that
John,
meeting. I don't think so. We're
we're at
kind
the
of winging it
meeting,
a
yeah.
little bit.
We're at a meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, so I reached out to Erin and just asked what she would like me to share, and she said they've been working on community partnerships where they heard from many high schoolers through student-led groups to see how they felt about community involvement, and hope to hear from middle schoolers by the end of the year. We're starting to look at community partnerships, but we'll continue this in the fall with new leadership coming on board. Interrupter posters that were created to help students stand up to bullying in schools are being distributed, and we hope to have them in all spaces next fall after staff understand how to use the posters to help problem solve and build community. The posters were created to incorporate feedback about creating schools that feel safe for everyone and to encourage others to speak up, interrupt, when they hear others being unkind, to help create or ensure school places where the culture of kindness is expected. So.
Great, thank you,
That's
Director
our-
Brecken. And now we can bring forward Marcy, Business Services Report.
I jumped the gun a little bit on that one. So in your packet is a budget update. So at the Finance Committee meeting in April, we did do more of a detailed overview, so this is very broad. Let me know if you have any questions. But the top of the paper, we start with the unassigned excess fund balance is $651,000. Then we look at our projected revenue. We're looking at 2% gen ed aid, compensatory aid increase, special ed aid, and then an increase in the levy, which comes to about 1.2 million. Then we see a projected increase in our existing expenses, so salary and benefits, what you guys just approved earlier in the evening, that is in here, the 8%. And then also contracted transportation, debt payments, and then the CARES funded positions, which we've been talking about quite a bit. The next line is the cost savings from staff replacements, so this is gonna be continual. Since our April Finance Committee meeting, people who have left or have been replaced, I update as we go. And then you'll also see that on the June 4th Finance Committee meeting, like this is just as of yesterday, right? It's gonna change again because we're gonna continue to fill and replace and update numbers. So as of yesterday, it was 130,000. The proposed net expense adjustments, so this is reductions of staff, services, what have you, we're at about 1.5 million. So next year, the projected unassigned deficit is about 2.8 million. When you take all that into account, we're always talking about an unassigned fund balance. We're currently projected to have about 13 million. If we take that 2.7 out of there, we're gonna be at 10.3, which is 10.31%. Our policy is at 10%, so we'd still be within our policy. Then there's a summary of the FTE of some of these reductions. So positions added, around 2 certified, non-certified 3, so a total of 5. And then positions reduced is 7 certified, about 11 non-certified, so almost 18 staff that are gonna be reduced. And then there is a line in there of the positions replaced. So you can see to date, we're gonna be replacing almost 28 positions, and that number will continue to grow, as I said. If you go to the next page, it is just a breakdown of district-wide versus elementary, middle school, high school, our learning centers or alternative learning sites, and then ECSE. And the only thing I want to point out on this is it doesn't necessarily equate the FTE. So for example, on reductions district-wide, 935,000, that's not for FTE. That is the reductions of staff and services and other things. So I don't want you to think that that's for FTE is $935,000, but FTE is in that number. That is very brief, broad. Is there any questions on that?
So you've cut $1.6 million and we're still 2.8 short.
Correct.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah. And in previous years prior to,
I know it's not gonna be that bad, but.
no, well, when we got typical deficit when we get there was about 1.8 million, and then we figure, because 1 to 2% of the budget, you're pretty much a balanced budget, because then we know things will ebb and flow throughout the year. So this point of the year, we're usually right there. We're about $1 million off with going to the 2.7, 2.8. As we shared at the last time too, and in the finance, 2.5 is probably where, I'm looking at Marcy, even though we like the number, is probably a more comfortable number. There's still a lot of things that are coming and going that we'll have to have answers to in the next month before we bring it forward to board approval. And again, this is a deficit we expected, which is one of the reasons we were very creative with how we supplanted and used our CARES dollars, which is why our fund balance went up, knowing that the cliff fall was coming. So this is one of the things we've been trying to navigate and plan for about 3 years.
So is this taking into consideration the 2.2 million that we lose?
Yes.
With CARES funding,
Yep.
yeah.
It was 2.7 million, I think.
Oh,
with CARES.
2.7, okay.
Again, under both Superintendents Hahn and Larson, there was a deliberate effort by the board that was continued by this board to
Save up.
squirrel that money for the rainy day.
And it's raining.
And
It's raining.
Yep, I mean, that was the idea. I mean, I think, if anybody chose to overlook that, they would think that what we were doing was inflating the fund balance beyond what we're capable of. So I'd say because of that advanced planning by both board members and some really diligent work by administrators, we're in a lot less difficult position than a lot of school districts around us are.
Of this size, for sure.
Yep.
Marcy, next year, not this coming year, the year after that, are we expecting an increase in funding from the state? Because we're gonna have an increase in expenses on our new contracts, right?
So the legislature doesn't meet until next spring to determine that's how our funding goes. So I don't
We have
know.
no idea. So we know what next year's gonna bring. We're gonna be short. We're gonna be down to 10 million, which is rock bottom, I think, for us. The state recommends 30%.
Yep.
Our policy here is 10%, if I'm right about that. So we'll be right at our policy level. We have to get a little creative, aren't we?
Nope.
It-
It's,
And I think if you look at historically in Brainerd, we've operated between that 8 and 10% fund balance for decades. Surrounding districts, smaller districts, a little bit of money can look like a larger reserve. So when you look at larger districts with a budget our size, 8 to 10% is where most districts are typically operating, especially those without an operating levy, because that's about where we get to function at the bare minimum. And this district for a good 20 years has functioned at about the bare minimum when you look at their fund balance. So I think you're gonna see that historical pattern of where we've been at. I've met with regional superintendents, neighboring superintendents, you know, if you wanna go to the east or west of us, to the east of us is probably looking at statutory operating debt. To the west of us, they're operating, by the time they get through this year, about an 8 to 10%. And that was a district that used to have a much larger reserve. So it's, again, we're a people business. So when you get to what are you reducing, where we typically reduce and where we have reduced is through attrition and reduction of staffing. So it's not ideal, but it's allowed us to operate and still do amazing things.
Yeah, we just can't do it for another 3 years because we're gonna be
No.
closed.
Well, we can't keep, it's a one-time dip into the fund balance if we get there, right? The challenge that'll come back to administration is how do you continue to navigate every year? Because prior to COVID, we were typically 1.4 to 1.8 deficit spending. By the time we get done, we get pretty close to right on target because we budget very conservatively. You know, we watch that closely. We've been predicting this pattern for a while, so you roll that budget forward. So no, you can't continue to dip in and take $1 million every year because it'll be gone, like you said, in 3. So it compounds, it's a compounding factor. I think that's one of the things when you set strategic goals or priorities for the incoming superintendent, I think there's some very clear targets or directions to look at. You know, we've talked about our middle school and our enrollment in a middle school, what needs to be different there. Some of our expenses in special education and comparing that to the state analysis. Some of the things potentially in elementary. So there's direction to go. It's just how the board wants to set that direction to go for the budget.
Do we invest the 13 million?
Yes.
And so what kind of return do you get on that? And how flexible are they with it?
It
move it
varies.
fast?
It varies. So it's Minnesota School District Liquid Asset Fund.
That's the
and
only place we can put it.
It's not the only place, but it does get us higher returns because pretty much all the schools put their money there.
Is it like, right now, is it like 5 or?
I think it's 5 to 6. I can double check, but
Well, so that's good, cause we're making like 650,000 a year off of our 13 million. So in a year, we'll make up 700,000 of that, and hopefully it'll be like last year where you predict $1 million, what was it last year? $1.8 million, and it came in at like 650?
well, actually, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but we actually went backwards. I don't think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago.
Seems to me last year we predicted it was gonna be like $1.8 million, wasn't it? And then
We
it came
started
in
there
like
and then we ended up,
660.
we came back ahead. And a lot of that was transportation savings. Like imagine we had almost $1 million in transportation, not savings we were seeking. But when you look at, can't find drivers, consolidating rates.
Consolidate some routes.
And that's what we've continued to move forward.
And in this is, Heidi said, well, what's reality of our routes? Because we would like to get back to having the full routes, but if that's not reality, then let's make a clearer picture. So I just want the board to be very clear that if our contractor was able to fulfill more routes, then that would mean we'd need to revise this budget because we are reducing that budget to what they're actually serving us. We've kind of left that in there
I think
previously.
you guys answered the question on that. I think that should be on our retreat list. This budget situation is pretty important and we should get ahead of it.
Mr. Chair? And that's exactly what I was just gonna say, is, while we need to direct the intern up to what we want, it's not only up to the intern. It's up to us as leaders to try to come up with a financial plan that has to happen now. Not in a year, not in 2 years, we gotta get at it.
Well, you know what the interesting thing
We
is?
gotta get at it. And so, what's that?
You know what the interesting part about it is we saved $1 million in transportation. And all we ever think about, or all I've ever thought about since I've been on here, is teachers, EAs, like how do we save money? I was thinking about when I first got on here, I was thinking about food, I was thinking about all these weird things that really don't make any difference, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. And here you go. All those kids got a ride to school that needed a ride to school, I think. And so we accomplished something, and boom, just think how many people's jobs we kept because of the kind of a fluke deal that you kind of fell into, but it just goes to show, yes, like a creative to find the money. Cause so busing comes out of the general, just like,
It does. And it's, in a lot of that you need to attribute to, Fran Jensvold's very gifted at, and she does the routing. And I think partnership, they've worked their tails off to try to figure it out. Now, honestly, we have some kids that are on the bus for over 2 hours.
yeah, that was me.
That's not ideal.
No,
It's not good. I mean, I sit in school 6.5, 7 hours, and now I'm on a bus 4 hours a day.
Oh, 2 hours each way.
2 hours each way,
So what time do they pick them up? Like at 6 o'clock in the morning?
6:05. So,
That's not good.
We gotta find a different.
so
way
there's,
around. So much
again,
for that idea.
but we've also left some to add those routes back, but that's been the hard, and we're also 517 square miles. There's gonna be long bus rides.
Well, I mean, you've been at this a year and a half. I mean, this is the reality that a small segment of our population in the community refuses to accept, which is there is nothing left to do that doesn't touch the classroom or the kid experience. That's it.
Yeah, it's touching
You
the
can
kid.
put your head in the sand and talk about this group being frivolous and spending and all this other, got a word for it, but I'll save it for another board meeting. But the reality is, it should be bring a critic to work day. They should just come in here and we did it back during the masking stuff too, where people were like, well, they're getting all this. I'm like, you know what, Marcio, open the books, come on in and look at them. You fix it. You tell me what to do. You voted for me, you tell me what you would do. And nobody's ever got an answer except on Facebook, from my experience. It's tough. You guys, there's nothing left. It's jobs, it's curriculum,
Yeah, we're down
it's
to the bone.
programs.
We're down to the bone right now.
That is, unless the state does something.
And I don't
It's not
think-
through any form of mismanagement. That's the bottom line.
State will do something. They'll give us more money and they'll give you 2 million and they'll make you spend 3.
Yeah.
We keep watching it. It just keeps happening. I mean, you've only been on this for a year and 5 months, and it's like every time they open their mouths, it's like, oh, we're gonna help you with this, and then it's like, well, that's not help, because
Well, we've also got to remain, and it's difficult when you have a situation like this, but we got to remain positive. We got to remain hopeful. We got to. I mean, we have to go to the community and say we're hopeful. You know, we got a great education system. We want to, keep going forward. We've got to be hopeful. We've got to be leaders. We've got to be positive. We've got to somehow make sure that we are delivering a message that our community is going, just like we did for the bonding, the building bond. So we got to keep that hope. We got to keep that hope. We got to keep, in my opinion, you got to keep positive. But we need. It's what I've been saying tonight is, we've got decisions to make, and they're tough decisions. We all know that. We all know that. They all know that. The community knows that. But let's not lose our hope. Let's discuss it. Bring our skills together, our talents together, and work on it together. Us and everybody. I mean, that's how we're going to get through this. It's the only way we're going to get through this. You can't count. Believe me, you can't count on the state. Although we hope.
We depend on them.
Well, there's a bill in there next year that I really think is going to come to fruition. I really believe. I just had a video on it the other day. Senator Grant Hochland, who's the Senate author, was out promoting that specific bill.
How does that affect us?
Oh, we have to pass an operating levy with it.
So a couple, 3 years, you mean?
Well, I don't. We can't wait a couple, 3 years.
Well, you're not going to get it passed till next year, and then it's going to take a while.
All I'm saying is there's ways that we need to just consider, moving forward and being positive, and working together. That's what we got to do.
Yep.
So this is just, the general fund unassigned. At the finance committee, I'll do a draft fund balance summary, which has all the funds. So you can expect that coming up. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, I'll go to the enrollment report. So this is going to be the last enrollment report for the year. Can't believe that we're winding down. We are down 82 from the beginning of the year in K through 12. The 5-year average is 98, so we're above that. When I look at how we've ended the year previously versus this last month versus what we closed out, so this is all head count, right? But when it converts to ADMs, one kid who is on here as 1.0 maybe was only here 1 month. It's not a true 1.0. We will be, if it's similar to previous years, the 5-year average will be about 20 off from budget. So that's very rough, rough analysis. We'll actually see the Mars submission will be in July, and then we'll get some preliminary numbers, and I'll be able to report back on how close we actually are to budget. The financial report is in your guys' packet as well. The community service and OPEB funds are down compared to prior year, which is a lot of times just due to timing of payments, so no concerns there. And then the construction funds continue to be different as projects wind down. So I don't have anything other than that to note. Any questions?
Marcy.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Mars.
Thanks, Mars.
Sorry.
Thank you.
My mouse won't work. I'm mad at my computer.
Now for your superintendent update. So, talk about hope. Let's do that. That'll be way more fun.
Good idea.
Thank you. Thank you. So, as we reflect on our mission of educate and inspire, one of the things that we've tried to do with the superintendent report is to give you those pieces of it. The first couple slides remain the same, and we'll continue to reflect on those. But our mission, educate and inspire each student by providing innovative opportunities to create lifelong success. You've heard this lots tonight because we've had our portrait of a graduate and how it ties to our strategic planning goals. But tonight I thought about how do we want to reflect educate? So this is where you need to remain hopeful and you need to start celebrating, because this is our favorite, absolute favorite time of the school year. Think about August when teachers are coming back, September when we're all going to the doctor because we have our first round of strep or pink eye or whatever's come to us. We live for the days that we get to see kids come through. And so these are our pre-K graduates coming up. So quotes, I got this, these are rough estimates, but 225 4-year-olds are getting ready to graduate from pre-K. Then we move forward to our kindergartners, as they will be going into some kindergarten graduations in the next couple weeks. We have almost 400 kindergartners that are going to be graduating from kindergarten and moving on to the first grade. Fourth grade is a huge, so this would be a snapshot of NISWA's fourth grade graduation last year. We're looking at 408 fourth graders who are going to be moving on to middle school. Those who got to sneak in for our time capsule seal and reveal our fourth grade letters were pretty inspirational when you see about their hopes and dreams for the future were not about themselves, but definitely for others. Eighth graders, I don't have a picture of our eighth graders. Middle schoolers are sometimes hard to capture, but we have 450 eighth graders moving on. And then when we get to the big day, when the sea of blue comes down to the field, we're looking at almost 500 high school graduates. When you look at Brainerd High School, Brainerd Learning Center, the Lincoln Education Center, and our Atlas program. So pretty good time. And when you think about all the effort that it takes to educate our students, this is the point where we really get to start celebrating. So I'm anxious for our community and for you as our board to come celebrate with our staff and students. And the second part of our mission statement is about inspiring, and I want to take this opportunity. We had several staff members who were honored as educators or pillars of excellence. And so I think it's really important that you get to see their faces and know who they are. This is Sarah Armstrong, teacher at Harrison Elementary. Sally Bisted, teacher at Forest View Middle School. Teresa Christensen, teacher at the Atlas program at our Lincoln Education Center. Susan Headley, retiring, I'm happy for her, but sad for us, Nisswa Elementary School. Renee LaFlame, teacher at Riverside Elementary School. Nathan Masakovic, teacher, Baxter Elementary School. Oh, I'm getting excited with my little buttons on the computer. Suzanne Miller, teacher, Brainerd High School, had submitted her retirement letter and pulled it to come back and teach again. Tom Atkins, these are our pillars of excellence. Tom Atkins was not able to come to the banquet to be honored, so this is his photo, but unique individual. He drives bus in the morning, comes to school at Riverside and does custodial work, and then drives bus in the afternoon for our students. One of the reasons he couldn't be at the banquet is because he was busy working. Deborah Bell, paraprofessional, also has taught Forest View Middle School. Laura Beckerman, paraprofessional, Baxter Elementary School. Marilyn Fanjoy, paraprofessional, Lincoln Education Center. Jesse Hawk, paraprofessional, Harrison Elementary School. O.J. Steffen, custodian, Nisswa Elementary School. And Pat Wilson, custodian, Brainerd High School. So this was a wonderful opportunity where our staff were lifted up and recognized for the incredible work that they do. And one of the best times of this year we talk about is all the staff that it takes. And I did this when I interviewed with you as for your superintendency, and I talked about how the gift of being in this system is we have educators that start with students at birth. And I've had the privilege of holding a child as they're in their young days and then watching them walk down in that sea of blue and be part of graduation and the hundreds of people that it takes to get our students there. And so this is a district of excellence. This is a district that educates and inspires students every day. And you need to know that the staff here feel it's a privilege to serve and be a part of all the things that are coming ahead of us for our students with graduation. So it's my superintendent's report for this board meeting.
Nice job, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Thank you. All right, then we'll close it out with director reports with Director Brecken.
I have nothing.
Director Heidman.
Nothing.
Director Dondlinger.
Nothing.
Director Ward.
I just am looking forward to working with all of you and all of you and all of them to move forward. Thank you.
Director Spear.
I don't have anything.
And just down to little old me with one last caveat from earlier this evening. I would like to point out just two quick things. The first is this board did not eliminate the assistant superintendent position. That was an administrative decision, not a board decision. Is that correct, Dr. Hahn?
Part of a budget discussion, correct?
So I want to make that clarification. And then the other thing is, again, it's another one of those where a lie gets around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. I got 3 separate communications today. One was that we offered and received acceptance from an interim superintendent candidate.
Yeah.
The second was from a possible superintendent candidate who informed a retired district employee that they'd been offered the job. And the third was, I don't even want to tell you what the third one was. Let's just say, if you don't know, don't say something. Call somebody who does know and ask them. It's just amazing to me, and this is all within the school district, right? This is not random people on Facebook. This is, so to set the record straight, I am meeting with Barb Dorn on Wednesday. At that point, she has placed calls to possible interim superintendent candidates who have been informed that we are interested in talking to them potentially. That is all we know at this point. I will know more on Wednesday, and this board will know more. The community will not know for a while because we have to sort through all of that. That is where that all sits. I just thought I'd get a couple of points of clarification out because having a day.
I've heard some rumors about myself too that are pretty much hilarious. But
No,
I'm
understood.
not even gonna acknowledge
No,
it.
I know.
It's so stupid to think that I'm that easily swayed.
So anyway, that's my director update. So I will not read through the future meetings. We've been here, I think, whacking away at this long enough. I would
Yeah, let's
entertain a
go.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Donlinger. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.